Hello, beautiful people. You've just landed on Ben 10 What If. Today's featured story is What If Ben 10 was a Jedi Master. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you're returning, you know the drill, like and share. Enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 1, The Omni-Jedi. The ancient temple's stone walls shuddered as Ben Tennyson sent the battle droid flying backward with a powerful force push. Sunlight streamed through the crumbling ceiling, illuminating swirling dust particles kicked up by the skirmish. 3 more droids rounded the corner, blasters raised. Oh come on, can't a Jedi catch a break? Ben grinned, the green light of his lightsaber reflecting in his eyes. At 26, he'd grown into his role as Jedi Master, though the Council would argue he hadn't grown out of his tendency to crack jokes in the middle of combat. The droids opened fire. Ben deflected the first volley of blaster bolts with practiced ease, his green blade moving in fluid arcs. But instead of continuing the defense, he slammed his palm against the Omnitrix on his wrist. A flash of emerald light engulfed him. Where Ben had stood, a crystalline being now towered, Diamond Head. The remaining blaster shots bounced harmlessly off his silicon-based form. My turn, he said, voice deeper and resonating with a crystalline quality. He thrust his transformed arms forward, sending crystal shards flying at the droids with precision. They dropped to the ground, impaled through their central processing units. Through the force, Ben sensed more hostiles approaching, and something else. A familiar presence. Ben. Little help here. Gwen's voice echoed from deeper within the temple. Diamond Head sprinted down the corridor, crystal feet clanking against the ancient stone floor. The temple on Ossus was supposed to be abandoned, one of the oldest Jedi sites in the galaxy. Yet someone had gone through the trouble of setting up an impressive security system complete with battle droids and energy barriers. Whoever they were, they'd picked the wrong day to mess with ancient Jedi artifacts. The Council had specifically sent Ben's team to investigate the recent string of raids on Force-sensitive sites, and Ben wasn't about to let this one slip through their fingers. He rounded the corner to find Gwen surrounded by a squadron of droids, her purple lightsaber a blur as she deflected blaster fire. Even as a Jedi Knight, his cousin's command of the Force remained unmatched among their peers. A shimmering barrier of energy surrounded her left side as she concentrated on maintaining the Force shield while fighting. Took you long enough, she called, not taking her eyes off the droids. Traffic was murder, Diamond Head replied, launching into the fray. Together, they made short work of the droids, Ben's crystalline projectiles complementing Gwen's lightsaber strikes. As the last droid fell, Ben tapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest and transformed back to human form in another flash of green light. He adjusted his Jedi robes, which the Omnitrix always adapted to whatever form he took. Any sign of Kevin or Rook? He asked, clipping his lightsaber to his belt. Gwen closed her eyes briefly, reaching out through the Force. Kevin's in the East Wing. Rook's closing in on the central chamber. That's where the artifact should be. Ben nodded, already moving. Race you there. Real mature, Master Tennyson, Gwen rolled her eyes, but there was a smile on her face as they sprinted through the temple corridors. The central chamber doors were already blasted open when they arrived. Inside, Kevin Levin was absorbing the metallic properties of a fallen droid, his body taking on its silver sheen. Even with his back turned, his distinctive silhouette, broad-shouldered and radiating barely contained energy, was unmistakable. "'Bout time you two showed up," he said without turning around. "Rook's tracking whoever was here. They've got the artifact." Ben moved past him to examine the empty pedestal in the center of the room. Ancient Jedi writing covered its surface, and lingering energy signatures resonated through the Force. "What did they take?" Gwen asked, joining him. According to the temple records, it was the Amulet of Transformation, a new voice answered. Rook Blanco stepped through a side entrance, his proto-tool already collapsed back into its resting position on his shoulder. The Ravanagander's feline features were drawn in concentration. The thieves escaped through a hidden passage. I tracked them to a landing pad, but their ship had already departed. Ben ran a hand through his brown hair in frustration. That's the third artifact stolen this month. All related to transformation or transfer techniques. Seems like someone's collecting, Kevin observed, the metallic sheen fading from his skin as he released the absorbed material. Question is, who needs ancient force tech for transformation when we've got the walking Swiss Army knife right here? He nodded toward Ben's Omnitrix. That's what worries me, Ben replied. The Council thinks these artifacts might have some connection to the Omnitrix, or at least to the principles behind it. Gwen was already examining the writing on the pedestal more closely. This describes the amulet as a tool for walking in another's form. Early shape-shifting technology, maybe. The Omnitrix doesn't just change my appearance, Ben said. It restructures my DNA. I literally become different species. Which defies everything we understand about the Force, Rook added. Life energy should be consistent regardless of form, yet when Master Tennyson transforms, his Force signature changes subtly. Kevin shrugged. That's our Ben. Always gotta be special. Ben ignored the jab and activated his communicator. Grandpa, we missed them. The amulet of transformation is gone. The blue hologram of Max Tennyson, distinguished Jedi Master and Council member, flickered to life above Ben's wrist. Age had turned his hair completely white, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. That's unfortunate, Max responded, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Did you find any clues about who's behind these thefts? Rook stepped forward. The operation was conducted by droids, but they were not standard battle models. They contained several modifications consistent with Siphon's work, Ben finished. Which means Vilgax is behind this. Max's expression darkened. If Vilgax is collecting transformation artifacts, we have a serious problem. Return to Coruscant immediately. The Council needs to hear about this directly. The transmission ended, and Ben turned to his team. You heard the man. Back to the ship. As they made their way out of the temple, Kevin fell into step beside Ben. So, Vilgax is back. Thought you kicked his butt all the way to the outer rim last time. Sith Lords have a nasty habit of not staying gone, Ben replied, his hand unconsciously moving to the lightsaber scar that ran along his right forearm, a permanent reminder of their last encounter. The Rust Bucket 3 waited where they had left it, a modified Corellian freighter that served as their mobile headquarters. As Rook prepped the ship for takeoff, Ben stared out at the ancient temple receding below them. Something about this didn't add up. Vilgax had always been obsessed with the Omnitrix, but why target ancient Force artifacts now? Credit for your thoughts. Gwen asked, settling into the seat beside him. Something's different this time, Ben said quietly. Vilgax is planning something bigger than just getting the Omnitrix. These artifacts, there's a pattern we're not seeing yet. We'll figure it out, she assured him. We always do. Ben nodded, but the uneasy feeling in his gut persisted as they made the jump to hyperspace, stars stretching into blue lines around them. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant stood as it had for millennia, a beacon of light and order in the galaxy. But even its peaceful halls weren't immune to politics, as Ben was quickly reminded when they arrived at the Council chamber. This is precisely why unregulated alien technology should not be permitted within the Order, Council member Dryba was saying, his Galvin form tiny but commanding attention from his elevated seat. The Omnitrix defies natural order. Now these thefts target similar technologies, the connection is obvious. With respect, Master Dryba, Ben interjected as he entered with his team, the Omnitrix has helped save countless lives, including many Jedi. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward the newcomers. The circular chamber fell silent as Grandmaster Yocto, a serene though Lothian female, gestured for Ben to approach the center. Master Tennyson, she acknowledged with a nod. We understand you have information regarding the recent thefts. Ben stepped forward while his team remained near the entrance. Yes, Grandmaster. We've confirmed that Vilgax is behind the raids. He's specifically targeting artifacts related to transformation or essence transfer. Murmurs spread through the council. Vilgax's name carried weight. The Sith Lord had been a plague on the galaxy for decades, his command of both the dark side and advanced technology making him uniquely dangerous. What would a Sith want with such artifacts? Asked Master Ultimos, his muscular arms crossed over his chest. I believe he's attempting to replicate or enhance the Omnitrix technology, Ben answered. Possibly to create an army of shapeshifters loyal to him. Or perhaps, Dryba cut in sharply, he's discovered what we've been reluctant to acknowledge, that the Omnitrix technology has roots in ancient force techniques for transferring essence between bodies. The chamber erupted in debate. Ben remained at the center, keeping his expression neutral despite his rising frustration. The tension between traditional Jedi teachings and acceptance of alien technologies had been growing for years, with Ben often caught in the middle. Grandmaster Yocto raised her hand, immediately silencing the room. This is not the time for this debate. Master Tennyson, what would you suggest as our next course of action? We need to predict the next target, Ben replied. All the stolen artifacts share common elements. With the Council's permission, I'd like to consult with the Archaeological Division to identify potential sites at risk. A sound approach, Grandmaster Max Tennyson spoke up, his weathered face serious. I recommend we assign Jedi Knight Kai Green to assist. Her expertise in ancient force artifacts would be valuable. Ben managed to keep his expression neutral at the mention of Kai's name, but he felt Gwen's knowing glance from across the room. His history with Kai was complicated. Very well, Yocto agreed. Master Tennyson, you and your team will work with Knight Green to identify the next likely target and intercept Vilgax before he acquires more artifacts. There's another matter, Council Member Pakmar interjected, his diminutive form practically bouncing with agitation. The Senate Committee on Jedi Affairs has requested Master Tennyson appear before them to address concerns about the Omnitrix. Ben suppressed a groan. With all due respect, we don't have time for political hearings while Vilgax is collecting dangerous artifacts. Nevertheless, Yocto said firmly, we must maintain our relationship with the Senate. You will appear before the committee tomorrow morning. Until then, begin your work with Knight Green. Recognizing dismissal, Ben bowed respectfully and rejoined his team at the entrance. As they exited the chamber, Kevin nudged him. Senate Committee, huh? Bet those Forever Knight supporters are behind this. No doubt, Ben muttered. The Forever Knights had transformed from a fringe political movement to a legitimate Senate faction in recent years, their platform built on traditional human values and thinly veiled xenophobia. Ben, with his alien transformations, represented everything they opposed. Don't let them get to you, Gwen advised. Focus on finding those artifacts. Speaking of focus, Kevin grinned, how long has it been since you've seen Kai? Drop it, Kevin, Ben warned, but he couldn't help the slight quickening of his pulse. Kai Green had been his fellow Padawan years ago before specializing in archaeological research. Their paths had crossed occasionally since then, sparks flying each time, both the good and argumentative kind. I'll head to the archives and start researching potential targets, Rook offered, always the practical one. Good idea, Ben agreed. Gwen, can you check with intelligence for any reported sightings of Vilgax or Siphon? Kevin, I want you looking into any unusual tech purchases or thefts that might be connected to modifying these artifacts. And what will you be doing, fearless leader? Kevin asked with a smirk. Ben glanced down the hallway toward the Archaeological Division. I'm going to find our artifact expert. The Archaeological Division occupied the eastern wing of the temple, its rooms filled with carefully preserved relics and bustling with scholars and droids cataloging the Jedi's extensive history. Ben navigated the controlled chaos, nodding to colleagues as he passed. He found Kai in one of the restoration laboratories, bent over an ancient tablet. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her brown skin glowed under the specialized lights used for examining delicate artifacts. She wore standard Jedi robes, modified with additional pockets and protective gear for fieldwork. Ben paused at the doorway, suddenly aware he hadn't prepared what to say. The Force worked in mysterious ways, but it had a particularly frustrating habit of complicating his personal life. Kai looked up before he could retreat, her eyes widening slightly in recognition. Master Tennyson. This is unexpected. Just Ben is fine, Kai. We've known each other too long for titles. She straightened, setting aside her tools with the careful precision of someone used to handling irreplaceable objects. I heard about Ossus. Another artifact taken. News travels fast. Ben stepped into the lab, keeping a professional distance. The council assigned you to help us identify potential targets. I've already been studying the pattern, she replied, gesturing to a holographic display showing the locations of previous thefts. The amulet of transformation from Ossus, the essence splitter from Dantooine, and the form shifter from Tython. All ancient devices that manipulate physical form through the Force. Ben moved closer to examine the display. Any idea what Vilgax could do by combining these technologies? Nothing good. Kai pulled up detailed images of each artifact. These weren't just curiosities, they were considered dangerous even by the ancient Jedi. The ability to change form or transfer essence between bodies blurs the line between self and other. It challenges everything we understand about how life energy connects to the Force. Sounds familiar, Ben said, unconsciously touching the Omnitrix. The Council's been debating for years whether my transformations affect my connection to the Force. Kai glanced at the device. The Omnitrix works through technology, not the Force. But these artifacts, they manipulated life energy directly. Combining that approach with Omnitrix technology could theoretically create something unprecedented. And knowing Vilgax, unprecedented, means catastrophic. Ben frowned. Any idea what he might target next? Kai hesitated, then pulled up another file. There's one artifact that would complete the set. The Mask of Transformation on Felucia. It supposedly allowed the wearer to not just change form, but to copy and retain the Force abilities of whatever being they transformed into. That sounds exactly like what Vilgax would want. Ben was already reaching for his communicator when Kai caught his wrist. Ben, there's something else you should know. Her expression was serious. These artifacts have a connection to the Omnitrix that the Council hasn't shared widely. Some of the earliest research suggests the Omnitrix creator, Azimuth, may have studied these ancient Force techniques when developing the transformation matrix. Ben stared at her, processing the implications. Are you saying the Omnitrix is based on Force technology? I'm saying there might be more overlap between Force techniques and advanced alien technology than either the Jedi or scientists like to admit, Kai replied carefully. And if Vilgax has figured that out, he could be working on a way to weaponize both, Ben finished, a chill running down his spine despite years of Jedi training in emotional control. We need to get to Felucia immediately. Kai was already gathering her equipment. I'm coming with you. That mask is thousands of years old, you'll need someone who can authenticate it and handle it safely. I was hoping you'd say that, Ben admitted with a half-smile. Team Tennyson could use an archaeology expert. Team Tennyson. Kai raised an eyebrow. Your humility remains intact, I see. Hey, Kevin came up with the name, not me. That explains it. She shouldered her pack, professional again. I'll meet you at the hangar in 30 minutes. Ben nodded and turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. It's good to see you again, Kai. She looked up, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. Try not to turn into something with tentacles this time. No promises. Ben grinned and headed out to gather his team, his step lighter despite the gravity of their mission. The Senate towers loomed over Coruscant's skyline, their gleaming surfaces reflecting the endless streams of air traffic. Ben straightened his formal Jedi robes as he approached the committee chamber, mentally preparing for the political battle ahead. Remember, Gwen advised beside him, stay calm no matter what they say. The Forever Knights want you to lose your temper. I know, Ben took a centering breath. I've been dealing with politicians since I was 10. Yeah, and your diplomatic skills haven't improved much since then, Kevin quipped from his other side. You're not helping, Gwen told him. Kevin shrugged. Just saying what we're all thinking. The committee chamber doors slid open, revealing a semicircular room with elevated seats for the senators. Ben recognized several faces, both allies and opponents of the Jedi Order. Senator Chadsmith, a frog like Galvin known for his slick political maneuvering, called the session to order. This committee meeting on Jedi affairs is now in session. We welcome Master Ben Tennyson to address concerns regarding the deployment of alien technology within the Jedi Order. Ben stepped forward to the central podium. Thank you, Senator. I'm happy to answer the committee's questions. Master Tennyson, began Senator Driscoll, the human leader of the Forever Knights faction, for over 15 years, you have utilized an alien device known as the Omnitrix in your role as a Jedi. This device allows you to transform into various alien species, correct? That's correct, Senator. And would you say this gives you capabilities beyond those of a normal Jedi? Ben chose his words carefully. The Omnitrix provides different capabilities, not necessarily greater ones. Each transformation has strengths and limitations. Yet you retain your Force abilities in these alien forms, Driscoll pressed. Does this not contradict the Jedi teaching that the Force flows through all living things equally? By changing your very species, are you not circumventing the natural order the Jedi claim to protect? Murmurs spread through the chamber. Ben sensed the trap being laid. Driscoll was trying to position him as either anti-Jedi or pro-alien technology, either of which would serve the Forever Knights' agenda. The Force does flow through all living things, Senator, but it manifests differently across species, Ben replied evenly. When I transform, I experience the Force as that species would. If anything, it's given me greater insight into the universal nature of the Force. A convenient perspective, Driscoll said dismissively. But recent events suggest your Omnitrix may be attracting dangerous elements. We understand Sith forces have been targeting artifacts with similar transformation properties. Is it not your responsibility to surrender this device before more damage occurs? Ben felt a flash of anger but released it into the Force. The Omnitrix has helped defend the Republic countless times. Surrendering it would only leave us more vulnerable. The proper response to those who misuse power is not to abandon our own. Bold words from someone who changes what he is with the press of a button, Driscoll replied coldly. Some might question whether you even know what you are anymore. Before Ben could respond, Senator Patalidae, a Pisxis Valen with gleaming scales, interjected. The committee recognizes that Master Tennyson's unique abilities have been invaluable in numerous crises. Perhaps instead of questioning his methods, we should focus on the immediate threat of these artifact thefts. The debate continued, political alliances playing out through carefully worded questions. Ben maintained his composure, though he felt his patience wearing thin as the session stretched on. Finally, Senator Chadsmith called for a recess. The committee will deliberate and issue recommendations regarding Jedi use of alien technology, he announced. Master Tennyson, you are dismissed with our thanks. Ben bowed respectfully and exited with Gwen and Kevin. That went about as well as expected, Kevin observed once they were in the corridor. Driscoll's got it out for you. It's not personal, Gwen said. The Forever Knights need an enemy to rally against. Ben's just a convenient target. Feels pretty personal to me, Ben muttered, checking his communicator. Rooks prepped the rust bucket. Kai's already on board. Let's get moving, politics can wait, Vilgax won't. As they headed for the landing platform, Ben's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission from the temple. Grandmaster Max's hologram appeared. Ben, we've detected unusual activity on Felucia. Energy signatures consistent with Sith alchemy near the temple site. We're heading there now, Grandpa. Kai identified the mask of transformation as the likely target. Be careful, Max warned. Our intelligence suggests Vilgax has acquired new capabilities. Don't underestimate him. Never do, Ben assured him. We'll update you once we secure the artifact. As they boarded the Rust Bucket 3, Ben found Kai and Rook already studying holographic maps of Felucia. The temple is located in the southern fungal forest, Kai was explaining. It's partially reclaimed by the native flora, which might work to our advantage. The dense growth will interfere with scanners. It will also interfere with our visibility, Rook pointed out. Felucia's ecosystem is highly aggressive. We must proceed with caution. Ben slid into the pilot's seat, running through pre-flight checks. Everyone strap in. We're taking the short route. Translation: hang on to your lunch, Kevin said, securing himself in the co-pilot's chair. The Rust Bucket lifted off, its engines flaring as Ben guided it away from Coruscant's crowded skylanes and toward open space. Within minutes, they had cleared the atmosphere and made the jump to hyperspace, the stars stretching into blue streaks around them. In the main cabin, Gwen projected a holographic display of what they knew about Vilgax's operations. Siphon's been spotted on 3 systems in the past week. He's gathering resources, specialized containment units, power cells, and crystalline conductors. Components for adapting the artifacts, Kai observed. He's building something to harness or combine their effects. Ben set the ship on autopilot and joined them. The big question is, why now? Vilgax has known about the Omnitrix for years. What changed? Perhaps it is not what changed, but what he discovered, Rook suggested. If Night Green is correct about the connection between these artifacts and the Omnitrix technology, Vilgax may have only recently uncovered this information. Which means someone helped him, Kevin concluded. Sith Lords aren't exactly known for their archaeological skills. A grim silence fell over the cabin as they considered the implications. If someone within the Jedi Order or the archaeological community had provided information to Vilgax, they had a serious security breach. We should assume Vilgax knows everything we do about these artifacts, Ben decided. Maybe more. Kai, what can we expect from this mask if he gets his hands on it? Kai pulled up the limited information available. Ancient texts describe it as the face of many faces. Supposedly, it allowed the wearer to not just take on the appearance of others, but to absorb and utilize their force capabilities temporarily. That doesn't sound good, Gwen said. It gets worse, Kai continued. Combined with the other artifacts, theoretically, one could create a device that permanently transfers force abilities between individuals. Force stealing, Kevin translated bluntly. Vilgax could drain the powers from captured Jedi and give them to his followers. Ben's hand unconsciously went to the Omnitrix. Or he could find a way to replicate my transformations but add stolen force abilities to each form. An army of shape-shifting Sith, Gwen said quietly. That would be the end of the Jedi Order as we know it, Rook finished. The ship's console beeped, indicating they were approaching Felucia. Ben returned to the pilot's seat, bringing them out of hyperspace into orbit around the vividly colored planet. Even from space, the world's bioluminescent plant life was visible, creating swirling patterns of light across its surface. I'm detecting multiple ships already in the atmosphere, he announced, checking the sensors. Looks like we're fashionably late to this party. Can you identify them? Gwen asked, joining him. Negative, but the energy signatures match known Sith vessels. Vilgax is definitely here. Ben guided the Rust Bucket through the atmosphere, skillfully navigating the turbulence. As they descended, the ship was enveloped in thick mist rising from the massive fungal forests below. Visibility's dropping, he warned. Switching to topographical guidance. The ship's systems projected a three-dimensional map of the terrain ahead, allowing Ben to navigate despite the limited visual range. He brought them down in a small clearing about 2 kilometers from the temple site. We go the rest of the way on foot, he decided, powering down the engines. Less chance of being detected. The team gathered their gear quickly. Kai checked her specialized equipment for handling ancient artifacts, while Rook calibrated his proto-tool for the planet's unusual atmospheric conditions. Kevin absorbed the metallic properties of a hull panel, armoring himself for the mission ahead. As the ramp lowered, the humid air of Felucia rushed in, carrying the pungent scent of alien vegetation. Massive luminous fungi towered overhead, their caps creating a natural canopy that filtered the sunlight into an eerie blue glow. "Stay close," Ben instructed. Felucia's native life forms can be as dangerous as any Sith. They moved through the dense undergrowth with practiced stealth, Rook taking point with Kai just behind him to guide their route. Ben and Gwen extended their force senses outward, searching for threats, while Kevin guarded the rear. After nearly an hour of careful progress, Rook signaled for them to stop. Ahead, barely visible through the thick vegetation, stood the ancient temple, a pyramidal structure almost completely overtaken by the planet's aggressive flora. Vines and fungi had claimed much of the exterior, but the distinctive architecture of the Old Republic era was still recognizable. "I'm sensing multiple life forms inside," Gwen whispered. "At least a dozen, plus, something else. A dark presence." "Vilgax," Ben confirmed grimly. "I'd recognize that force signature anywhere." "We need to get closer," Kai said. The mask would be kept in the central chamber, but there might be security measures even after all these centuries. Ben studied the temple entrance, noting the guards posted at regular intervals. "Direct approach is out. We need a distraction." A smile spread across his face as he activated the Omnitrix, cycling through the available transformations. "And I know just the alien for the job." He slammed his hand down on the device, and a flash of green light enveloped him. In his place stood Wildvine, a plant-like alien with vine-like limbs and a body well-suited to Felucia's environment. "I'll create a diversion on the eastern side," he said, his voice now deeper and resonating with a plant-like quality. "When they investigate, the rest of you slip in through the main entrance. Rook, you and Kai head for the central chamber. Gwen and Kevin, run interference if needed." "Be careful," Gwen warned. "Your plant form might blend in here, but Vilgax will sense you through the force." "Counting on it," Wildvine replied with a grin. "He's always had a special hatred for me. Should be easy to get his attention." Before anyone could object further, he sank into the ground, his body merging with the native flora. Moving through the planet's interconnected root systems, he traveled rapidly to the eastern side of the temple. Once in position, he emerged from the ground and focused on the force, channeling it through his transformed body. The sensation was different in this form, more connected to the living ecosystem around him. With a controlled burst of energy, he sent a massive fungal growth toppling toward the temple wall. The crash echoed through the forest, and shouts of alarm rose from the guards. As expected, most of them rushed to investigate the disturbance. Through his connection to the planet's flora, Wildvine sensed his team moving toward the now less defended main entrance. "Time for Phase 2, he muttered, stretching his vine-like arms toward the temple. He pulled himself up the wall, finding handholds in the ancient stonework and overgrown vegetation. As he reached a high window, he sensed a familiar dark presence becoming aware of him. Good. Vilgax was taking the bait. Now he just had to keep the Sith Lord occupied long enough for Kai to secure the mask. Wildvine slipped through the window into a dimly lit corridor. The interior of the temple was less overtaken by plant life, though vines snaked along the walls and floor in places. Ancient carvings depicted beings in various stages of transformation, changing from one form to another through the power of the Force. Fascinating, he murmured, briefly wishing he had time to study them properly. Kai would probably. His thoughts were interrupted by the distinctive hum of a lightsaber igniting. Wildvine turned to face two red-bladed weapons held by a figure in black armor. "Plant or human, Tennyson, your Force signature gives you away," the figure growled, voice distorted by a breathing apparatus. "Though I must admit, I'm pleased you've saved me the trouble of hunting you down." "Vilgax," Wildvine acknowledged. "Nice mask. Breathing problems again, or just going for the intimidation factor?" The Sith Lord advanced, his red blades casting sinister shadows on the temple walls. Mock while you can. Soon, I'll possess both the power of the Force and your ability to transform. The perfect combination. Yeah, about that, not happening. Wildvine lashed out with his vines, aiming to disarm his opponent. Vilgax sliced through them effortlessly, but the distraction allowed Wildvine to leap back and tap the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Another flash of green light, and he transformed into Heat Blast, his body composed of living magma and flame. Let's turn up the heat, Heat Blast said, sending a blast of fire down the corridor. Vilgax deflected the flames with a force barrier, his eyes narrowing behind his mask. Your parlor tricks won't save you this time. The duel erupted in earnest, fire meeting lightsaber in a display that would have been beautiful if it weren't so deadly. Heat Blast kept mobile, using the temple's high ceilings to gain aerial advantages while raining down fireballs. Through his connection to the Force, Ben sensed his team had reached the central chamber. He needed to keep Vilgax distracted just a little longer. What's the matter, Vilgax? Getting slow in your old age, he taunted, dodging a powerful force push that cracked the stone wall behind him. Your arrogance blinds you, Tennyson, Vilgax snarled. Even now, my forces are securing the mask of transformation. Your friends will be dealt with, and then nothing will stand between me and ultimate power. Heat Blast grinned, flames flickering brighter. About that, you might want to check your intel. A tremor ran through the temple, followed by the distinctive sound of combat from the direction of the central chamber. Vilgax's eyes widened momentarily before narrowing in rage. Siphon, report, he barked into a communicator on his wrist. Static was his only answer. Your interference ends now, Jedi. With surprising speed, Vilgax lunged forward, one lightsaber sweeping low while the other came down in a powerful overhead strike. Heat Blast barely managed to create a heat shield in time, but the force of the blow still sent him crashing into a wall. Momentarily stunned, Ben lost concentration and reverted to his human form. He reached for his lightsaber just as Vilgax closed in for the kill. Green plasma met red as Ben ignited his blade, blocking Vilgax's strike inches from his face. The Sith Lord pressed down, using his superior physical strength to push the blade closer. I have waited for this moment, Vilgax hissed, his breath rattling through his mask. The Jedi who transforms, defeated by the power he has always taken for granted. Ben struggled against the pressure, sweat beading on his forehead as he channeled the Force to augment his strength. Sorry to disappoint, but I've got places to be. With a sudden twist, he redirected Vilgax's blades to the side and rolled away, coming up in a defensive stance. Before Vilgax could press his advantage, the temple shook again, more violently this time. Ben! Gwen's voice came through his communicator. We've got the mask, but Siphon activated some kind of self-destruct mechanism. This place is coming down, get out now. On my way, Ben replied, not taking his eyes off Vilgax. Got a Sith problem to handle first. Another time, perhaps, Vilgax said, surprising Ben by deactivating one lightsaber and reaching into his robe. He withdrew a small device that pulsed with an ominous red light. Consider this a preview of what's to come. He activated the device, and a wave of energy erupted outward. Ben felt it wash over him, and for a terrifying moment, the Omnitrix on his wrist flickered and went dark. What did you, Ben began, but Vilgax was already retreating, moving with inhuman speed toward an exit. Ben tried to activate the Omnitrix, but it remained unresponsive. Pieces of the ceiling began to fall around him as the temple's structural integrity failed. With no time to pursue Vilgax, he sprinted toward the central chamber, using force-enhanced speed to navigate the crumbling corridors. He found his team at the main entrance, Kai clutching a secured containment unit presumably holding the mask. Cutting it close, aren't you? Kevin called as Ben slid beneath a collapsing archway to reach them. Vilgax had other ideas, Ben replied, breathing heavily. He used some kind of device on the Omnitrix. It's not working. Questions later, Gwen said firmly. Run now. Together, they raced away from the temple as it collapsed behind them, the ancient structure finally surrendering to time and damage. They didn't stop until they reached the relative safety of a massive fungal grove several hundred meters away. Is everyone okay? Ben asked, looking over his team as they caught their breath. Nods all around, though Rook was nursing a wounded arm and Kevin had already lost parts of his metallic coating in the fight. We secured the mask, Kai said, opening the containment unit just enough to show a glimpse of an ancient, ornately carved facial covering. Siphon nearly had it, but your distraction worked perfectly. What happened with Vilgax? Gwen asked, concern evident in her expression. You said the Omnitrix isn't working. Ben examined the device on his wrist. The familiar green glow was absent, replaced by a dull gray. He used some kind of energy pulse on it. Temporary EMP, maybe? Or something worse. We should return to Coruscant immediately, Rook suggested. The Jedi technicians might be able to reactivate it. Agreed, Ben said, though his eyes scanned the jungle around them. But Vilgax escaped, and he seemed too confident. This feels like part of a larger plan. One problem at a time, Kevin reminded him. Mask secured, temple destroyed, everyone alive. I'm counting that as a win. They made their way back to the rust bucket, alert for any sign of Vilgax's forces. The ship appeared undisturbed, and a quick scan confirmed no sabotage or tracking devices. As they prepared for takeoff, Kai secured the mask in a specialized vault. This artifact is even more remarkable than the record suggested, she said. The craftsmanship is unlike anything I've seen from that era. Any idea how it works? Gwen asked, helping Rook bandage his injured arm. Theoretically, it creates a force bond between the wearer and the subject they wish to emulate, Kai explained. Not just copying appearance, but actually channeling their force signature temporarily. In the wrong hands. Like Vilgax's, Ben finished for her, still trying to reactivate the Omnitrix without success. Exactly. Combined with the other artifacts he's stolen, he could potentially create a permanent transfer mechanism. Ben guided the ship up through Felucia's atmosphere, his expression grim. We need to report to the Council immediately. If Vilgax is building what we think he is, every Force user in the galaxy could be at risk. As they broke through to open space, Ben couldn't shake the feeling that they had won the battle but were rapidly losing the war. The Omnitrix remained dark on his wrist, and somewhere out there, Vilgax was moving forward with his plan. The stars stretched into hyperspace streaks as the rust bucket made the jump to Coruscant. For now, at least, they had the mask. But Ben knew from experience that Vilgax never gave up easily, and this time, he seemed more prepared than ever. Back on Coruscant, the Jedi Council received their report with grave concern. The mask was secured in the deepest vaults of the temple while technicians examined the Omnitrix. The device is intact, reported Master Blukik, a Galvin specialist. But it's entered some kind of protection mode after exposure to the energy pulse. I estimate 72 hours before it reactivates fully. 3 days without alien transformation, Ben sighed. Vilgax couldn't have timed it better. Perhaps it is an opportunity, Grandmaster Yocto suggested. To rely solely on your Jedi training for a time. Ben nodded respectfully, though frustration simmered beneath his calm exterior. Without the Omnitrix, he felt incomplete. It had been part of him for so long that its absence was like losing a limb. Our immediate concern is determining Vilgax's next move, Master Max stated, bringing the discussion back to the mission. He now possesses 3 of the 4 transformation artifacts. Even without the mask, he may attempt to activate his device. The artifacts are synergistic, Kai explained, showing holographic reconstructions. Each one enhances the others. With 3, he could create a limited version of what he's planning, perhaps not permanent force transfer, but temporary ability absorption. That's bad enough, Ben said. A Sith who could temporarily steal force abilities would still be devastating in combat. We need to locate his base of operations, Rook proposed. Siphon requires significant equipment for his experiments. That limits possible locations. Kevin stepped forward. I still have contacts in the underworld. I can put out feelers, see if anyone's been moving unusual tech. Do it, Max authorized. But be careful. If word reaches Vilgax that we're searching for him, he might accelerate his timeline. As the meeting concluded, Ben found himself on one of the temple's meditation balconies, staring out at the endless cityscape of Coruscant. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Credit for your thoughts? Kai asked, joining him at the railing. Just wondering what Vilgax is planning next, Ben replied. He seemed too confident on Felucia, even after losing the mask. Kai studied his profile, noting the tension in his shoulders. It's not just about Vilgax, is it? The Omnitrix being deactivated, that's bothering you more than you're letting on. Ben smiled ruefully. That obvious, huh? Only to someone who's known you since we were Padawans. He sighed, looking down at the dormant device. It's been part of me for so long. I know I shouldn't rely on it, the Council's been telling me that for years. A true Jedi needs only the Force, right? The Council's not always right, Kai said, surprising him. Your connection to the Omnitrix is unique. It's shaped your relationship with the Force in ways that are neither better nor worse than traditional paths, just different. Try telling that to the Forever Knights, Ben said with a wry smile. Or Master Dryba, for that matter. Since when do you care what others think? Kai nudged his shoulder playfully. The Ben Tennyson I remember was too busy saving the galaxy to worry about approval ratings. That drew a genuine laugh from him. Fair point. I guess some Jedi wisdom has rubbed off on me after all these years. They fell into comfortable silence, watching as the city lights began to illuminate the deepening dusk. The artifacts, Ben said finally. You mentioned they might have a connection to the Omnitrix. What exactly did you mean? Kai hesitated, choosing her words carefully. There are records suggesting Azimuth visited Jedi archaeological sites decades ago. He was particularly interested in these transformation artifacts. The Galvin have always been secretive about the Omnitrix's development, but... You think he reverse-engineered Jedi transformation techniques? Ben completed her thought, staring at the device with new eyes. I think he may have been inspired by them, Kai corrected. The Omnitrix is still primarily technological, but Azimuth might have incorporated principles from Force-based transformation to make it work harmoniously with living beings. Ben contemplated this. That would explain why my Force signature shifts slightly with each transformation. I'm not just changing physically, I'm experiencing the Force as that species naturally would. Exactly, Kai nodded. And that's what makes you uniquely qualified to stop Vilgax. You understand both the technology and the Force aspects of what he's trying to do. If only the Omnitrix would wake up, Ben muttered, tapping the device in frustration. It will, Kai assured him. In the meantime, remember you're still a Jedi Master with or without it. Ben smiled at her, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. When did you get so wise, Knight Green? Someone had to balance out your impulsiveness, Master Tennyson, she replied with a smile of her own. The moment was interrupted by Ben's communicator chiming. Kevin's voice came through, urgent and slightly breathless. Ben, you need to get to the Senate District now. The Forever Knights are making their move, they're calling for emergency legislation to ban alien technology contaminating the Jedi Order. They're specifically targeting the Omnitrix. Ben and Kai exchanged alarmed looks. On my way, Ben responded, already moving. Alert Gwen and Rook. There's more, Kevin continued. My sources say they've been meeting with someone matching Siphon's description. I think the Knights and Vilgax might be working together. That's not good, Ben said, a masterpiece of understatement. Where are you now? Outside Senator Driscoll's office. I followed one of his aides who was acting suspicious. Sending coordinates. Sit tight. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary, Ben instructed. He turned to Kai. Coming. She was already falling into step beside him. Try and stop me. As they raced toward the Senate district, Ben couldn't help but feel the timing was suspiciously convenient. The Omnitrix disabled, political pressure mounting, and Vilgax working with the Forever Knights. The pieces were falling into place, but for what endgame? Whatever it was, Ben was determined to stop it, Omnitrix or no Omnitrix. After all, as Kai had reminded him, he was a Jedi Master first. And sometimes, the old ways were the best ways. The speeder bike hummed beneath them as they cut through Coruscant's evening traffic, the wind whipping past as Ben pushed the vehicle to its limits. Ahead, the Senate complex glowed with activity despite the late hour, a testament to the political crisis brewing within. The final confrontation was coming, and Ben could only hope they were ready for whatever Vilgax had planned. Chapter 2, Legacy of the Force. Ben stared at the dormant Omnitrix, the familiar green glow still absent after 12 hours of the best Jedi technicians working on it. The council chamber had emptied following their emergency session, leaving only Ben, his team, and Grandmaster Max. The Forever Knight's timing is too perfect, Ben said, pacing across the polished floor. They introduce legislation targeting the Omnitrix right after Vilgax disables it. That's not coincidence. Kevin's intelligence confirms it, Gwen added, bringing up a holographic image showing a hooded figure meeting with Senator Driscoll. Siphon has been seen entering the Senate building through service tunnels. So Vilgax supplies the tech, and the Forever Knights provide the political cover, Kevin concluded, leaning against a pillar with his arms crossed. Classic corrupt politician playbook. Rook studied the Senate proposal on his datapad. The legislation calls for immediate confiscation of all unregulated alien technology within the Jedi Order. They specifically cite recent artifact thefts as justification. They're creating their own problem, then presenting themselves as the solution, Kai observed. And with the Omnitrix disabled, they picked the perfect moment to portray you as dangerous. Ben stopped pacing and faced his grandfather. We need to move fast. If the Senate passes that legislation, they could legally confiscate the Omnitrix, even broken. Grandmaster Max nodded gravely. I've been working diplomatic channels, but many senators are swayed by the Forever Knights' arguments. Fear is a powerful motivator. Meanwhile, Vilgax gets exactly what he wants, political chaos distracting us while he completes his device, Ben said. We need to find him before that happens. I've analyzed the energy signatures from the artifacts, Kai stepped forward, bringing up a holographic star map. There's a pattern to where these devices work most effectively, planets with strong force convergences. Based on what we know about the 3 artifacts Vilgax has collected, there's only one place he could go to activate them effectively. The hologram zoomed in on a dark, foreboding planet. Anna Trancel, Kai announced. The Shadow World. Rook's normally composed expression showed rare alarm. That planet has been restricted by the Jedi Order for centuries due to its dark side contamination. Which makes it perfect for Vilgax, Ben said grimly. The ambient dark side energy would amplify the artifact's power. It's worse than that, Kai continued. According to ancient texts, Anna Trancel was once home to beings who naturally possessed transformation abilities. The planet's connection to the Force manifests specifically in ways that allow for physical metamorphosis. Kevin whistled low. A planet-sized amplifier for exactly what Vilgax wants to do. We need to go there immediately, Ben decided. If Vilgax activates his device on Anna Trancel, the power output could be catastrophic. Grandmaster Max frowned deeply. Anna Trancel is dangerous, Ben. The dark side presence there has driven many Jedi to madness. Without the Omnitrix functioning. I'm still a Jedi Master, Ben interrupted firmly. And we don't have time to wait. Every hour gives Vilgax more chance to succeed. After a moment of consideration, Max nodded. Very well. But take extreme caution. The Senate vote is scheduled for 3 days from now. If you're not back by then with evidence of Vilgax's plot, I can't stop them from demanding the Omnitrix. Understood, Ben replied. We'll leave immediately. As the team prepared to depart, Kai pulled Ben aside in the hangar bay. There's something else you should know about Anner Trancel, she said quietly. The records mention an ancient entity that ruled there, a being called ZS Scare. Some texts describe it as an ectoneurite, a species that could possess others. Ben's eyes widened slightly. Like my ghost freak form. Exactly. If there's a connection, then my Omnitrix might respond to the planet's energy, Ben finished, a spark of hope lighting his expression. It could jumpstart the reactivation. Or it could do something unpredictable, Kai cautioned. The texts aren't clear on ZS Scare's nature, but they use terms like consciousness devourer and mind splitter. Not exactly reassuring. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Ben replied. Right now, stopping Vilgax is all that matters. The Rust Bucket 3 lifted off from the temple hangar within the hour, its course set for the distant Anner system. As Coruscant receded behind them, the team gathered in the main cabin to review what little information existed about their destination. Anner Trancel orbits a dying star, Rook explained, displaying astronomical data. The planet receives minimal sunlight, existing in a state of perpetual twilight. Surface temperatures average below freezing. Sounds charming, Kevin remarked. What about inhabitants? Unknown, Rook answered. The last official Jedi expedition was over 3 centuries ago. They reported primitive settlements and evidence of ancient civilizations, but no contact with sentient life forms. The Jedi who led that expedition never returned to normal, Gwen added softly, reading from historical archives. They spent the rest of their lives in the Mind Healer's care, speaking of shadows that think and bodies without owners. A somber silence fell over the cabin. Well, that's not creepy at all, Kevin finally said, his sarcasm failing to hide his discomfort. We'll stay together at all times, Ben decided. And maintain constant mental shields. If the dark side is as strong there as the reports suggest, we need to guard against its influence. The journey to the Anner system took 14 hours, even pushing the Rust Bucket's hyperdrive to its limits. As they dropped out of hyperspace, the view screen filled with the unsettling sight of their destination, a world shrouded in perpetual twilight, its surface a patchwork of deep shadows and pale, sickly terrain. I'm detecting energy fluctuations consistent with powered technology, Rook reported from the sensor station. Concentrated in what appears to be a temple complex near the northern pole. That's our target, Ben said. Take us in, but keep the stealth systems active. Let's not announce our arrival. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship was buffeted by violent winds carrying particles that scratched against the hull with an unnerving sound like fingernails on metal. Visibility dropped to near zero as they descended through thick, purple-tinged clouds. This place feels wrong, Gwen said quietly, her hands slightly raised as she sensed their surroundings through the Force. It's like the dark side is physical here. I can almost touch it. Everyone maintain your mental shields, Ben reminded them. Don't let your guard down for a second. The ship broke through the cloud layer, revealing a desolate landscape below. Jagged rock formations rose like teeth from cracked, frost-covered plains. Pools of luminescent liquid cast an eerie glow across the terrain, providing the only substantial light in the dim twilight. Rook guided the ship toward a relatively flat area about 2 kilometers from the energy readings. The Rust Bucket settled onto the frozen ground with a slight crunch, its landing gear adjusting to the uneven surface. External temperature is -15 degrees, he announced. Atmosphere is breathable but contains high levels of particulate matter. Pack environmental gear, Ben instructed. And extra power cells for all equipment. Something tells me this planet drains energy sources quickly. As the team prepared to disembark, Ben stood alone in the cockpit, staring out at the bleak landscape. He tried once more to activate the Omnitrix, cycling through its startup protocols as Blukik had shown him. The device remained stubbornly dark. "We'll fix it," Kai said, joining him with thermal gear in hand. "One way or another." Ben nodded, accepting the insulated cloak she offered. "I've been without it before. I just picked a bad time to get stuck as plain old Ben Tennyson." "There's nothing plain about Ben Tennyson," Kai replied with a slight smile. "Omnitrix or not." Something in her tone made him look up, their eyes meeting briefly before both glanced away. Ben cleared his throat. "We should join the others." The team gathered at the exit ramp, checking weapons and gear one final time. Rook's proto-tool was configured for low-light combat, while Kevin had absorbed the properties of Durasteel from the ship's hull plating. Gwen activated a subtle force barrier around herself, protection against both the cold and the planet's oppressive dark side energy. "Stay in visual contact at all times," Ben instructed, clipping his lightsaber to his belt. "Comms might be unreliable here." The ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, and a blast of freezing air rushed into the ship. Ben led the way out, boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. The air tasted metallic and carried strange scents, decay mixed with something almost electrical. "The temple should be that way," Rook indicated, checking his scanner. Approximately 1 hour's journey on foot. They set off across the barren plain, the only sounds their footsteps and the occasional moan of wind through distant rock formations. As they walked, Ben noticed something unsettling. Their shadows seemed to move slightly out of sync with their bodies, almost as if struggling to keep up. "Anyone else notice that?" he asked quietly, gesturing toward the ground. "Don't focus on it," Gwen advised, her voice tight. "The dark side plays tricks with perception here." After about 20 minutes of walking, they crested a low ridge and gained their first view of the temple, a massive structure of black stone rising from the landscape like a wound. Unlike the geometric precision of most Jedi or Sith temples, this building had organic, almost fluid architecture, as though it had grown rather than been built. "I'm detecting multiple life forms," Rook reported, scanning the structure. "And significant power readings. Someone has reactivated the temple's systems." "Vilgax," Ben confirmed, stretching out with the force. The familiar dark presence was there, but oddly muted, as if camouflaged by the planet's ambient dark side energy. "We need to get closer," he decided. "Find a way in that won't immediately alert them to our presence." They approached cautiously, using the irregular terrain for cover. As they drew nearer, details of the temple became clearer, writhing patterns carved into its surface that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally, and entrance-ways that resembled gaping mouths rather than doors. "Those are ectoneurite symbols," Kai whispered, pointing to markings around what appeared to be a side entrance. "This confirms it, this was Zscare's stronghold." "What do they say?" Ben asked. Kai studied them, brow furrowed. "Something about the divide between flesh and spirit. It's a warning, I think. Or an invitation, depending on how you translate it." "Charming," Kevin muttered. "Any idea which entrance would be least guarded?" Before anyone could answer, a piercing alarm cut through the silence. Red lights flashed around the temple's perimeter, and the ground beneath them trembled. "So much for the stealthy approach," Ben grimaced. "They know we're here." Figures emerged from the temple entrances, battle droids interspersed with robed humanoids wielding red-bladed lightsabers. "Sith acolytes," Gwen identified them. "Vilgax has been recruiting." "Change of plans," Ben announced, unclipping his lightsaber. "Direct approach. Rook, Kevin, take the droids. Gwen, Kai, handle the acolytes. I'll find Vilgax." Green plasma blazed to life as Ben ignited his weapon. "Stay in communication range if possible. If we get separated, the ship is our rally point." They charged forward as the enemy forces advanced to meet them. The battle erupted across the frozen plain, lightsabers clashing in bursts of color against the twilight backdrop. Ben cut through the first line of droids, his blade moving in precise arcs that reflected years of Jedi training. Without the Omnitrix, he relied entirely on his Force abilities, enhancing his speed and strength, sensing attacks before they came, and moving with a fluidity that belied his human limitations. A Sith acolyte lunged at him, red blade slashing downward. Ben parried and counterattacked, driving the dark side user back with a series of swift strikes. The acolyte was skilled but predictable, relying on aggression over technique. Ben feinted left, then spun right, his lightsaber finding an opening and cutting through the acolyte's defenses. As the battle spread across the temple grounds, Ben fought his way toward the main entrance. Through gaps in the combat, he caught glimpses of his team, Gwen deflecting force lightning from an acolyte, Kevin smashing through droids with metallic fists, Rook and Kai fighting back-to-back against a squad of specialized combat units. They were holding their own, but more enemies kept emerging from the temple. This wasn't just a security force, it was an army. Vilgax had prepared extensively for potential interference. Ben reached the main entrance, dispatching 2 guard droids with quick lightsaber strikes. The massive doorway loomed before him, covered in the same unsettling carvings as the temple exterior. Without hesitation, he pressed forward into the darkness beyond. The interior of the temple was eerily silent compared to the battle outside. Ben's lightsaber cast a green glow over ancient walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The air was noticeably colder here, carrying a scent like ozone and something else, something old and unnatural. As he moved deeper into the structure, Ben felt a growing pressure against his mental shields, the dark side pressing in from all directions, probing for weaknesses. He reinforced his defenses, drawing on years of Jedi training to maintain his focus. The corridor opened into a vast central chamber. Massive pillars supported a ceiling lost in shadow, and in the center stood a platform surrounded by equipment that looked distinctly out of place among the ancient architecture, Vilgax's technology, powering up for something significant. And there, overlooking it all, stood the Sith Lord himself. Vilgax had changed since their last encounter. His armor now incorporated elements that appeared to be made from the same material as the temple, and glowing lines of energy ran across his form like circuitry. Tennyson, he acknowledged without turning. Right on schedule. Give it up, Vilgax, Ben called, lightsaber at the ready. Whatever you're planning, it ends here. The Sith Lord turned slowly, his red eyes gleaming in the dim light. On the contrary. It's only beginning, and you've arrived just in time to witness it. He gestured to the machinery surrounding the central platform. 3 artifacts, each allowing transformation in a different way. The amulet controls the body. The splitter controls the mind. The form shifter controls the spirit. Together, on this world where the barriers between states of being are thinnest, they will allow me to create the ultimate weapon. Let me guess, Ben said, edging closer while keeping his guard up. You want to mass-produce the Omnitrix effect for your troops. Create an army of shapeshifters. Vilgax laughed, a harsh sound that echoed unnaturally in the chamber. So limited in your thinking. The Omnitrix is impressive technology, but ultimately flawed. It changes the physical form while leaving the essence intact. My device will do the opposite, it will extract and transfer force abilities while leaving the physical form unchanged. Ben's eyes widened as he realized the implications. You're building a force extractor. You want to steal the abilities of force users. Precisely, Vilgax confirmed. Imagine it, Tennyson, the power of 100 Jedi, concentrated in one warrior. Or distributed among an army loyal only to me. The Senate will never let you get away with this, Ben said. Once they know what you're planning, the Senate. Vilgax interrupted with a dismissive gesture. They're already serving my purpose. The Forever Knights create the diversion while I complete my work. By the time they realize they've been manipulated, it will be too late. Ben raised his lightsaber. There's still one problem with your plan. Me. Vilgax's expression hardened. A problem easily solved. He reached to his belt and unclipped not one but two lightsabers, igniting dual red blades. Especially now that you're without your precious transformations. The Sith Lord lunged forward with surprising speed. Ben met the attack, his single green blade moving in a defensive pattern against Vilgax's dual weapons. The clash sent sparks flying across the chamber, illuminating ancient carvings that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. Ben quickly found himself on the defensive. Without the Omnitrix, he couldn't match Vilgax's alien physiology. The Sith Lord was stronger, faster, and had reach advantage. But Ben had years of Jedi training to draw on, and the Force flowed strongly through him. He parried a vicious overhead strike, redirecting the energy to slide past Vilgax's guard and attack from the side. The Sith Lord blocked with his second blade, then countered with a Force push that sent Ben skidding backward across the stone floor. "Your skills have improved, Tennyson," Vilgax acknowledged. "But without your transformations, you're just another Jedi." Ben regained his footing, centering himself in the Force. "That's where you're wrong. I was a Jedi before I had the Omnitrix. I'll be a Jedi long after it's gone." He charged forward, lightsaber a blur of green energy as he pressed his attack. For a moment, he drove Vilgax back, his blade coming within inches of the Sith Lord's armor. Then Vilgax counterattacked, his superior strength allowing him to bat aside Ben's lightsaber and land a kick that sent the Jedi Master flying into one of the ancient pillars. The impact knocked the breath from Ben's lungs and sent his lightsaber clattering across the floor. "And now, the end of Ben Tennyson," Vilgax declared, advancing with both lightsabers ready for a killing blow. Ben reached for his fallen weapon through the Force, but Vilgax was too close, too fast. The red blades descended, and stopped, inches from Ben's throat, as a wave of purple energy slammed into Vilgax from the side. "Sorry to crash the party," Gwen called from the chamber entrance, hands still glowing with Force energy. Behind her, Kevin and Rook engaged the Sith acolytes trying to enter the room. Ben seized the moment, calling his lightsaber back to his hand and rolling away from Vilgax. "Perfect timing, cuz." Vilgax roared in frustration, turning his attack toward Gwen. She met his lightsabers with a Force shield, the energy barrier straining under the assault but holding. Ben rejoined the fight, attacking Vilgax from behind. The Sith Lord was forced to divide his attention, one lightsaber engaging Ben while the other kept Gwen's Force attacks at bay. "Tennyson." Kai's voice echoed through the chamber as she fought her way inside. "The artifacts, they're already activated." Ben glanced at the central platform where the 3 stolen artifacts now glowed with pulsing energy, connected by beams of light to form a triangular circuit. Power was building, creating distortions in the air above the platform. "We need to shut it down," Ben shouted, dodging a vicious slash from Vilgax's lightsaber. "Too late," the Sith Lord laughed. "The process has begun. In moments, I will have the power to extract Force abilities at will." The energy buildup reached a critical point, the beams connecting the artifacts intensifying to blinding brightness. Then something unexpected happened, the Omnitrix on Ben's wrist suddenly flared to life, its surface glowing not with its usual green but with an eerie purple light. Pain shot through Ben's arm as the device responded to the energy field. The Omnitrix's display cycled rapidly through alien forms before stopping on one, Ghost Freak, the ectoneurite transformation. "What's happening?" Ben gasped, momentarily distracted from the battle. Vilgax seemed equally surprised, his attack faltering as he stared at the Omnitrix. "Impossible. The device should be inactive for at least another day." "The resonance pattern," Kai called, fighting her way closer. "This planet's energy is jump-starting it, but something's wrong with the calibration." Before Ben could respond, the Omnitrix activated on its own. Green-purple light engulfed him, the transformation process feeling drastically different than usual, more painful, less controlled. When it cleared, he had become Ghost Freak, but not the version he remembered. This form was larger, with more pronounced claws and a body that seemed to be composed of darkness rather than ectoplasm. Most disturbing of all, Ben realized he could feel the presence of another consciousness within the transformation, ancient, powerful, and malevolent. Interesting development, Vilgax observed, momentarily pausing his attack. It seems Anar Transil's energy is affecting your transformation. Perhaps I won't need my device after all, I could simply take the Omnitrix here, where its true potential is revealed. Ghost Freak, Ben, floated above the ground, trying to maintain control of the alien form. The dark side energy of the planet seemed to flow through him now, amplifying both his strength and the foreign consciousness struggling for dominance. Not happening, Vilgax, he managed to say, his voice distorted and overlaid with another, deeper tone. Whatever's happening, I'm still in control. He extended a clawed hand, and tendrils of darkness shot forth, wrapping around Vilgax's weapons and wrenching them away with surprising force. The Sith Lord stumbled backward, momentarily disarmed. Ben pressed his advantage, floating rapidly toward Vilgax and unleashing more shadowy tendrils. But as he did, he felt the alien consciousness growing stronger, pushing against his control of the form. My body, a voice whispered in his mind. My world. My power. Who are you? Ben demanded internally, struggling to maintain focus on the external battle. I am Zia-Scare, the voice replied. High Ectolord of Anar Transil. And you have brought my essence back to where it belongs. Realization dawned on Ben, Ghost Freak wasn't just a transformation. The DNA sample in the Omnitrix contained the consciousness of this ancient entity, usually suppressed but now awakened by the planet's dark side energy. Ben. Gwen's voice cut through his internal struggle. The artifacts. They're overloading. The energy connecting the 3 stolen artifacts had destabilized, crackling with power that lashed out at the surrounding machinery. Vilgax's technicians fled in panic as control consoles exploded. No. Vilgax roared, rushing back toward the platform. The alignment is critical. It must not be interrupted. Ben fought through the dual battle, against Zia-Scare for control of his form, and against Vilgax for control of the artifacts. He reached the platform seconds before the Sith Lord, extending his ghostly hands toward the nearest artifact, the Amulet of Transformation. The moment he touched it, power surged through him. The amulet resonated with his ectoneurite form, creating feedback that traveled through the energy circuit to the other artifacts. The system, already unstable, began to collapse. What are you doing? Vilgax demanded, attempting to push past Ben to the controls. Stopping you, Ben replied, his voice more his own as he focused his will. These artifacts were never meant to be used together, especially not here. With a final surge of effort, he channeled force energy through the ectoneurite form and into the amulet. The crystalline object cracked, its glow faltering. The energy circuit between the artifacts collapsed, sending a shockwave through the chamber that knocked everyone off their feet. In the chaotic moments that followed, Ben felt Zia-Scare's presence receding, driven back by his assertion of will. The transformation began to deteriorate, the Omnitrix timing out prematurely. A flash of purple-green light, and Ben was human again, kneeling on the stone floor beside the now dormant artifacts. The Omnitrix on his wrist had returned to its inactive state, though occasional sparks of energy still played across its surface. Vilgax struggled to his feet across the platform, his armor damaged and one arm hanging limp. This isn't over, Tennyson, he growled. You've merely delayed the inevitable. Ben rose shakily, retrieving his lightsaber from where it had fallen. It's over for now, Vilgax. Your device is destroyed, your plan failed. The Sith Lord's eyes narrowed. Is it? He gestured to a small device clutched in his functioning hand, a data storage unit, still intact. I have what I need from the artifacts. Their physical form was always secondary to the knowledge they contained. Before Ben could react, Vilgax activated a personal shield and backed toward a side exit. We'll meet again soon, Jedi. When the Senate strips you of your precious Omnitrix, remember that I offered you power beyond your imagination. He turned and fled through the doorway. Ben moved to pursue, but a tremor shook the temple, more violent than before. Chunks of stone began falling from the ceiling. "Ben!" Gwen called urgently. "This whole place is coming apart. We need to leave now." He hesitated, torn between pursuing Vilgax and ensuring his team's safety. Another section of ceiling collapsed, deciding the matter. "Fall back to the ship," he ordered, helping Kai to her feet. "This temple's been unstable for centuries, our fight must have triggered a collapse." They fought their way back through the temple corridors as the structure disintegrated around them. Outside, the battle between Sith acolytes and droids had devolved into chaos, with both sides fleeing the collapsing temple. The team sprinted across the frozen plain toward where they'd left the rust bucket, dodging falling debris and fissures opening in the ground. Behind them, the ancient temple imploded with a thunderous roar, sending a cloud of dust and dark side energy billowing across the landscape. They reached the ship just as the ground beneath it began to crack. Rook raced to the cockpit, firing up the engines while the others secured themselves for emergency takeoff. The rust bucket lurched upward, nearly caught by a grasping tendril of darkness that rose from the collapsing temple site. Ben felt it through the force, not just energy, but something sentient, reaching for them with malevolent intent. "Go, go, go!" he shouted, and Rook pushed the engines to maximum, breaking free of the planet's pull. As they escaped Anner Transil's atmosphere, the team gathered in the main cabin, catching their breath and assessing injuries. Kevin had a nasty gash across his shoulder, while Rook was nursing a sprained wrist. Gwen looked exhausted from channeling so much force energy, and Kai was carefully documenting readings she'd taken during the confrontation. "What happened back there, Ben?" Gwen asked quietly. "When you transformed, you didn't seem like yourself." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, now completely dormant again. "I wasn't entirely myself. When the device activated, it connected with someone, on that planet." ZS Scare, the ectoneurite ruler Kai mentioned. His consciousness was preserved in the Omnitrix's ectoneurite DNA sample, Kai theorized, looking up from her data. Normally dormant, but awakened by returning to Anner Transil. "Great," Kevin muttered, wincing as he applied a Bacta patch to his wound. "So now we have to worry about your watch being possessed too?" "I don't think so," Ben replied. "When the Omnitrix shut down again, I felt ZS Scare's presence fade. Without the planet's dark side energy amplifying it, the consciousness should return to dormancy." "Should?" Gwen raised an eyebrow. "Best guess," Ben admitted. "We're in uncharted territory here." Speaking of uncharted, Rook called from the cockpit, "Sensors are detecting a ship leaving the system, likely Vilgax making his escape." "Can we pursue?" Ben asked, moving to join him. Rook shook his head. "Not in our current condition. We sustained damage during takeoff, and fuel reserves are at 40%. We need to return to Coruscant for repairs." Ben nodded reluctantly. "Set course for Coruscant. We need to report to the Council anyway. Vilgax may have escaped, but at least we disrupted his operation." "Not entirely," Kai pointed out. "He still has data from the artifacts, and he mentioned something about not needing the physical artifacts anymore. Which means he has what he needs to try again," Ben concluded grimly. "Just not on Anner Transil." As the ship made the jump to hyperspace, Ben retreated to the small meditation chamber, seeking clarity through the Force. The encounter with ZS Scare had shaken him more than he wanted to admit. For those brief moments, he had felt what it was like to not be in control of his own form, a terrifying experience for someone who had mastered transformation years ago. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, opening his eyes. Kai entered, carrying 2 steaming cups. "Thought you could use this," she said, offering one to him. "It's an herbal tea from Felucia, helps ground the mind after dark side exposure." Ben accepted gratefully, the warmth of the cup pleasant against his still cold hands. "Thanks. How are the others?" "Resting. Kevin needed a few stitches, but nothing serious." She sat across from him, studying his face. "You're troubled." It wasn't a question. Ben sighed, taking a sip of the bitter tea. "When Z's scare was in my mind, he knew things, Kai. About the Omnitrix, about the artifacts. He called them crude imitations of ectoneurite abilities." "Did he say anything else?" she asked, leaning forward with scholarly interest. "He mentioned something called the Shifter's Communion, a state where those who master transformation can experience the Force from multiple perspectives simultaneously." Kai's eyes widened. I've seen that phrase in ancient texts, but it was always considered mythical. A theoretical state rather than something achievable. Z's scare seemed to think it was real, Ben replied. And that the artifacts were created as an attempt to achieve it artificially. Which would explain why Vilgax wants them so badly, Kai mused. If he believes he can reach this state, he'd have access to aspects of the Force no one has experienced for millennia, Ben finished. Maybe ever. They sat in silence for a moment, considering the implications. "There's something else," Ben finally said. "When I touched the amulet in Ghost Freak form, I saw visions. Fragments of memory, not mine. I think they belong to the artifact's creator." "What did you see?" Kai asked softly. "A Jedi, or something like a Jedi. This was thousands of years ago, experimenting with transformation. They believed that by experiencing different physical forms, they could understand the Force more completely." Ben set down his cup, expression troubled. "But something went wrong. They lost themselves in the transformations, forgetting who they originally were." "The risk of impermanence," Kai nodded. "It's mentioned in the earliest Jedi warnings about transformation techniques. The fear that changing one's form too often could lead to a loss of core identity. Is that why the Council has always been uncomfortable with the Omnitrix?" Ben wondered. "They're afraid I'll lose myself in the transformations?" "Possibly," Kai acknowledged. "Though you've proven them wrong for over 15 years. Ben glanced down at the dormant device. Maybe they weren't entirely wrong to worry. "What happened on Anor Transil? I felt what it was like to lose control, to have another consciousness fighting for dominance." "But you didn't lose yourself," Kai pointed out. "Even with Z's scare and the planet's dark side energy working against you, you maintained your identity." Before Ben could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Ben, you need to see this," Gwen's voice came through, tense and urgent. "We're receiving an emergency broadcast from Coruscant." Ben and Kai exchanged concerned looks before hurrying to the main cabin. The others were already gathered around the holographic projector, where a news broadcast was playing. "Unprecedented attack on the Jedi Temple," a reporter was saying as footage showed smoke rising from the temple's eastern wing. "The group calling themselves the Forever Knights has claimed responsibility, stating that they were attempting to secure dangerous alien artifacts being kept within the Jedi vaults." "No," Ben breathed, watching in horror as the camera panned across damaged sections of the sacred building. "Casualties have been reported, though exact numbers are unclear at this time," the reporter continued. "The Senate has called an emergency session to address the situation, with Forever Knights representatives demanding immediate action regarding what they term the alien contamination of the Jedi Order." "They're accelerating their timeline," Gwen said grimly. "Using the attack to force an early vote on the alien technology ban." "How long until we reach Coruscant?" Ben asked Rook. "Approximately 6 hours at current speed," the Ravanaгаnder replied. "I can attempt to push the hyperdrive for more, but given our damage, do it," Ben ordered. "We need to get back before the Senate votes." As Rook returned to the cockpit, Kevin gave voice to what they were all thinking: "This stinks of a setup. The Forever Knights attack the temple while we're off-world, then use it to push through their legislation before we can testify. And with Grandmaster Max likely occupied with the temple defense, the Jedi will be without their strongest voice in the Senate," Gwen added. "It's worse than that," Kai said quietly, studying a datapad she'd retrieved. "According to this update, the attack specifically targeted the archaeological vaults. They were after the mask of transformation. Ben's expression hardened. Did they get it? Kai scrolled through the report. It doesn't say, but there's mention of significant losses from the secure artifact storage. So we stopped Vilgax from getting the mask, only for his Forever Knight's allies to steal it anyway, Ben concluded bitterly. This whole mission might have been a diversion. We couldn't have known, Gwen said, placing a hand on his shoulder. And we did stop Vilgax from activating his device on Anor Trancel. Small comfort if the Forever Knights deliver the mask to him anyway, Ben replied. He turned to Kai. Is there any chance they don't know what they have? That they just grabbed whatever alien artifacts they could find? Kai considered this. It's possible. The mask was kept in specialized containment, unlabeled. Without proper knowledge, they might not recognize its significance. Then we still have a chance, Ben decided. If we can recover the mask before they deliver it to Vilgax. First we need to get back to Coruscant in one piece, Kevin pointed out. And deal with whatever political nightmare is waiting for us. The ship lurched slightly as Rook adjusted their course, pushing the damaged hyperdrive harder. Ben felt the vibration through the deck plates and hoped the rust bucket would hold together for the journey home. As the others discussed strategy for their return, Ben found himself drawn back to the viewport, staring out at the streaking stars of hyperspace. The Omnitrix remained inactive on his wrist, but occasionally he thought he felt a flicker of energy from it, an echo of what had happened on Anor Trancel. ZS Scare's words echoed in his mind, the Shifter's communion. A state of perfect harmony between transformation and the Force. Was that what the ancient Jedi had been seeking with their artifacts? What Vilgax now pursued? And more troubling, was it something Ben himself had been unconsciously working toward all these years, combining his Jedi training with the Omnitrix's powers? The questions would have to wait. Right now, the Temple was under attack, the Senate was in crisis, and somewhere out there, Vilgax was advancing his plan. Ben needed to be ready for whatever came next, with or without the Omnitrix. The situation on Coruscant was worse than they'd feared. As the rust bucket approached the capital planet, they received clearance not for the Jedi Temple landing pads but for a Senate security dock. By order of the Senate Committee on Jedi Affairs, you are directed to dock at Senate Platform 94 for immediate debriefing, the traffic controller informed them, voice clipped and formal. Since when does the Senate direct Jedi missions? Kevin muttered. Since about 6 hours ago, Gwen replied grimly, reviewing the latest updates on her datapad. They've invoked emergency powers to investigate the security breach at the Jedi Temple. Ben exchanged concerned looks with his team. Comply with the docking request, he instructed Rook. Let's not give them any reason to escalate this further. The rust bucket settled onto the designated platform, where a contingent of Senate guards waited, their blue armor gleaming in Coruscant's midday sun. As the team disembarked, a familiar figure stepped forward from behind the guards. Master Tennyson, Senator Chadsmith greeted with forced politeness. The committee appreciates your prompt return. Senator, Ben acknowledged with a respectful bow. We came as soon as we received news of the attack. What's the situation at the temple? Under control, though the damage was significant. Chadsmith's amphibian features made his expression difficult to read. However, before you proceed there, the committee requires your presence for questioning regarding your mission to Anor Trancel, an explicitly restricted world. We were pursuing a Sith Lord who's threatening the Republic, Ben replied, keeping his tone measured despite his growing frustration. Surely that takes precedence over committee hearings. In normal circumstances, perhaps, Chadsmith conceded. But these are not normal circumstances. The Forever Knight's attack has raised serious questions about Jedi security protocols and the storage of dangerous artifacts. Questions that would be better addressed after we've contained the immediate threat, Ben countered. Chadsmith's eyes narrowed slightly. The committee has determined that you, Master Tennyson, may be part of that immediate threat. Before Ben could respond, Kevin stepped forward. That's ridiculous. Ben spent his entire life protecting the Republic. Kevin, Ben warned quietly, placing a restraining hand on his friend's arm. It's all right. He turned back to Chadsmith. I'll appear before the committee as requested, Senator. But my team should be allowed to report to the temple. They have crucial information about Vilgax's plans. After a moment's consideration, Chadsmith nodded. The others may proceed to the temple, under escort, of course. You will come with me to the Senate immediately. Ben turned to his team. Go. Report everything we learned to Grandpa Max. And find out if the mask was really taken. We're not leaving you to face the Senate alone, Gwen protested. You're not, Ben assured her with a small smile. You're making sure our mission wasn't for nothing. The political stuff I can handle. After a moment's hesitation, Gwen nodded. Be careful. The Forever Knights will try to provoke you. When don't they? Ben replied lightly, though his eyes conveyed the seriousness of the situation. As his team departed with half the Senate guards, Ben followed Chadsmith to a waiting speeder. The journey to the Senate building was tense and silent, giving Ben time to observe the city. Security had been visibly increased, with Republic military vessels patrolling the skylanes and additional guards at government buildings. The Senate itself was a hive of activity, with representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to address the crisis. Ben sensed anxiety and fear permeating the massive structure, emotions that made rational discussion difficult and created fertile ground for the Forever Knights rhetoric. Instead of the main chamber, Chadsmith led Ben to a smaller committee room where a dozen senators waited, including Driscoll, whose satisfied expression did nothing to hide his animosity. Master Tennyson, he greeted with false cordiality. How convenient that you were off-world during the attack on your temple. Almost as if you had advanced knowledge. Ben maintained his composure, bowing respectfully to the assembled senators. I was pursuing the real threat behind recent events, Sith Lord Vilgax, who I believe is coordinating with elements within the Forever Knights. Murmurs ran through the committee at this accusation. Driscoll's face flushed with anger. A baseless claim. The Forever Knights stand for the protection of the Republic against alien influences. We would never collaborate with Sith. Then perhaps you can explain why your people targeted the exact artifact Vilgax has been seeking, Ben replied evenly. The Mask of Transformation, which, when combined with the other artifacts he's collected, could create a weapon capable of stealing Force abilities. This revelation caused a stir among the senators, many of whom were hearing these details for the first time. What evidence do you have of this alleged plot? Senator Pataliday asked, his fishy features creased with concern. My team and I confronted Vilgax on Anor Trancel, where he was attempting to activate a device using the 3 artifacts he'd already stolen, Ben explained. We prevented its activation, but he escaped with data that could allow him to rebuild elsewhere, especially if he acquires the 4th artifact. Which brings us to the matter at hand, Chadsmith interjected. The Forever Knights claim they were removing dangerous alien artifacts from inadequately secured Jedi vaults. Given what you've just described, it seems their concerns were justified. The mask was in specialized containment designed for Force-sensitive artifacts, Ben countered. It was perfectly secure until the Knights attacked the temple directly. Yet now it's in unknown hands, Driscoll observed smugly. A failure of Jedi protection that proves our point. The Order is no longer capable of safeguarding dangerous technology, particularly when its own members employ such technology personally. His gaze fixed meaningfully on the Omnitrix, still dormant on Ben's wrist. The Omnitrix is not the issue here, Ben stated firmly. It's never been a security risk to the Republic. In fact, it's helped save countless lives over the years. A matter of perspective, Driscoll replied. From where we stand, a device that allows unnatural transformation, especially in the hands of someone who can already manipulate the Force, represents an unacceptable concentration of power. This committee is not here to debate philosophy, Chadsmith cut in. We need to address the immediate crisis. The legislation regarding alien technology within the Jedi Order has been fast-tracked for a vote tomorrow morning. Master Tennyson, the committee would like your voluntary compliance in surrendering the Omnitrix for secure study until this matter is resolved. Ben felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. With respect, Senator, I cannot do that. The Omnitrix is crucial to countering Vilgax's plans, especially now that he may have access to all 4 artifacts. Then you leave us no choice, Driscoll said, satisfaction evident in his tone. We will proceed with the vote as scheduled, which will legally compel the surrender of all alien technology within the Order, including your device. Senators, Ben appealed to the wider committee, I understand your concerns, but rushing this decision in the midst of a crisis plays directly into the hands of those who orchestrated these events. Give us time to recover the stolen artifact and capture Vilgax. Then we can discuss proper regulations for Force-sensitive technology. A few senators nodded thoughtfully, but Driscoll was quick to counter. More delays while the threat grows. The time for action is now. The Forever Knights have already demonstrated the Jedi cannot be trusted with these artifacts. Why should your wrist device be any different? Before Ben could respond, the chamber doors opened and Grandmaster Max entered, his Jedi robes showing signs of recent combat. Forgive my interruption, Senators, he said with a respectful bow. But I bring information critical to these proceedings. Grandmaster Tennyson, Chadsmith acknowledged. The committee recognizes your right to address us, but be aware we have nearly concluded our business with Master Ben Tennyson. Then my timing is fortuitous, Max replied. We have confirmed that the attack on the temple was not conducted by the main Forever Knights faction, but by a splinter group led by former Knight Commander Enoch, who has been positively identified as a collaborator with the Sith Lord Vilgax. He activated a holographic projector, displaying security footage of a robed figure meeting with Siphon in a Coruscant undercity location. The figure removed his helmet, revealing Enoch's distinctive features. This was captured 3 days ago, Max explained. Our intelligence division has been tracking Enoch's movements since we first suspected Sith involvement with the Forever Knights. Driscoll stood abruptly. This proves nothing. Enoch was expelled from our organization months ago for extremist views. His actions do not reflect Forever Knights policy. Yet he wore your insignia during the attack, Max pointed out. And used access codes that had not been changed since his departure, an oversight that suggests either gross negligence or tacit approval. The committee erupted in heated discussion, with several senators now viewing Driscoll with evident suspicion. Ben exchanged a quick glance with his grandfather, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Senators, Ben addressed the committee once more, in light of this new information, I request that the vote on the alien technology legislation be postponed until a full investigation can be conducted. Let's not make hasty decisions based on what increasingly appears to be a manufactured crisis. Senator Patalade nodded vigorously. I second this motion. We cannot vote on such important legislation under these circumstances. The chair recognizes the validity of these concerns, Chadsmith acknowledged after a moment's consideration. The vote will be postponed for 72 hours while the Senate Security Council investigates these allegations. Driscoll's face darkened with barely contained rage. This is outrageous. The Jedi are clearly manipulating evidence to protect their own interests. That's enough, Senator, Chadsmith replied firmly. The decision has been made. This hearing is adjourned. As the senators filed out, many giving Driscoll a wide berth, Ben approached his grandfather. Perfect timing, he said quietly. Though I'm guessing that evidence has been ready for a while. We've been monitoring Enoch for months, Max confirmed. But sometimes, information is most effective when properly timed. His expression grew serious. What happened on Anner Transel? Your team gave me the basics, but I want to hear it from you. Ben recounted their confrontation with Vilgax and the unexpected activation of the Omnitrix, including his encounter with Zscare's consciousness. Troubling, Max murmured when he finished. If Vilgax has the data he needs to recreate his device, and now potentially the mask as well. We need to find him before he can put it all together, Ben concluded. Did the Forever Knights actually get the mask in the attack? Max's expression was grim. Yes. They breached the secure vault and took several artifacts, including the mask. We've recovered most of them, but the mask remains missing. And the Omnitrix is still down, Ben added, looking at the dormant device. Blukik says at least another 36 hours before it reactivates, maybe more after what happened on Anor Transl. Then we proceed without it, Max decided. You're a Jedi Master, Ben, not just the wielder of the Omnitrix. It's time to remind the galaxy of that fact. They exited the committee room to find Gwen waiting in the corridor, her expression troubled. You didn't tell him, she asked Max. I thought it best coming from you, Max replied. Ben looked between them. Tell me what? Gwen took a deep breath. We found something in the temple archives while investigating the attack. Records that had been accessed recently, information about Galvin Prime and something called the Forge. Asmatha's workshop, Ben realized. Where the Omnitrix was created. Yes, Gwen confirmed. And according to the access logs, the person who viewed those records was Kai. Ben stared at her in disbelief. That's impossible. Kai's been with us the whole time. Not the whole time, Gwen said gently. Remember when she stayed behind to catalog findings after the Felucia mission? And she was alone in the archaeological division for hours before we left for Anor Transl. You think Kai is working with Vilgax? Ben shook his head firmly. No way. I'd have sensed it. Not if she's been shielding her intentions, Max pointed out. The records don't lie, Ben. Someone using Kai's access codes retrieved highly classified information about Galvin Prime's defenses and Asmatha's facility. Ben's mind raced, trying to reconcile this accusation with the Kai he knew, the dedicated archaeologist who had fought alongside them against Vilgax. Where is she now? He asked. That's the other problem, Gwen replied. She disappeared right after we returned to the temple. Rook and Kevin are trying to track her, but so far, nothing. Ben closed his eyes briefly, reaching out through the Force for any sense of Kai. There was nothing, either she was deliberately shielding her presence, or she was already far from Coruscant. I need to find her, he decided. If she's in trouble, or if she's been coerced somehow. Or if she's been working with Vilgax all along, Max said gently. We have to consider that possibility, Ben. I know her, Ben insisted. There has to be an explanation. Then find her, Max agreed. But be prepared for what you might discover. Gwen will go with you. What about the Senate situation? Ben asked. I'll handle the political front, Max assured him. We've bought 72 hours, use them wisely. Find Kai, recover the mask if possible, and stop Vilgax before he completes his device. What about the Omnitrix? Even if it reactivates in the next day or so, it might be unstable after what happened on Anor Transl. All the more reason to focus on your Jedi abilities, Max replied. You've relied on the Omnitrix for many years, Ben. Perhaps this is the Force's way of reminding you of your foundation. Ben nodded reluctantly. Where do we start looking for Kai? Kevin managed to access her recent communications before she disappeared, Gwen said. There was a coded message sent to a relay in the tie-in cluster. Rook's trying to trace it further, but it's going to take time. Time we don't have, Ben muttered. He straightened his shoulders, decision made. We'll start with her quarters at the temple. Maybe she left something behind that could give us a clue. As they prepared to depart the Senate building, Ben caught sight of Senator Driscoll engaged in intense conversation with several aides, his expression thunderous. Their eyes met briefly across the corridor, and the hatred in Driscoll's gaze was unmistakable. The Forever Knights wouldn't give up their campaign against the Jedi, and against Ben specifically, just because of one setback. If anything, they would redouble their efforts in the coming days. Another problem for another time. Right now, finding Kai and stopping Vilgax had to take priority. If the Sith Lord completed his force extraction device, no one would be safe, Jedi, politician, or civilian. As they boarded a temple transport, Ben found himself unconsciously touching the dormant Omnitrix. For 15 years, it had been his partner in protecting the galaxy. Now, when he might need it most, he had to proceed without it. Master Yocto's words from their previous meeting echoed in his mind, perhaps it is an opportunity to rely solely on your Jedi training for a time. Whether opportunity or crisis, Ben had no choice but to face what came next as a Jedi first and foremost. The Force would have to be enough. Kai's quarters in the temple residential wing were exactly as might be expected for a Jedi archaeologist, small but comfortable, with artifacts carefully displayed on shelves, reference materials neatly organized, and several half-completed research projects spread across her desk. What was unexpected was the state of disarray they found it in. Drawers had been pulled open, contents hastily searched. Data storage devices were missing from her computer terminal. Someone had been here looking for something, or removing evidence. This doesn't make sense, Ben said, surveying the scene. If Kai was working with Vilgax, why would she leave in such a hurry that she'd tear apart her own room? Maybe she wasn't the one who did this, Gwen suggested, examining the lock on the door. No signs of forced entry, though. Whoever searched this room had authorized access. Ben moved to the desk, carefully sifting through the scattered notes and diagrams. Most related to legitimate archaeological projects, but one datapad caught his attention. It contained schematics for what appeared to be the Omnitrix, alongside notes comparing it to the transformation artifacts they'd been tracking. She was researching the connection between the Omnitrix and the artifacts, he murmured. But these notes date back months, long before the current crisis. Look at this, Gwen called from the bedroom area. She held up a small holoprojector. It was hidden under a false bottom in her nightstand. She activated the device, and a recording of Kai appeared, looking tense and hurried. If you're seeing this, then I couldn't explain in person, the holographic Kai began. I've been investigating the connection between the transformation artifacts and the Omnitrix for over a year now. 3 months ago, I discovered something disturbing, evidence that Vilgax has a spy within the Jedi Archaeological Division. Ben and Gwen exchanged surprised looks as the recording continued. I've been feeding them carefully selected information, trying to identify the traitor. When the artifacts began disappearing, I realized the spy was using my research to help Vilgax target specific items. Holographic Kai glanced nervously over her shoulder before continuing. If I've disappeared, it means either I've gotten too close to identifying them, or they've discovered my counter-operation. So she was running a sting operation, Ben said, relief evident in his voice. She wasn't the traitor. There's more, Gwen said as the recording continued. The most important thing isn't the artifacts, it's where they came from. All 4 were created by the same ancient Jedi, someone called the Shifter. But they weren't his greatest work. Kai's hologram leaned closer. He created a 5th artifact, one that controls the others. The Forge of Forms, a device capable of creating new transformation artifacts or modifying existing ones. And it's on Galvin Prime, Ben concluded, the pieces falling into place. That's why those files were accessed. The forge must be stored in Azmatha's facility. The hologram flickered as Kai continued. I believe Vilgax's ultimate goal isn't just the 4 known artifacts, it's the forge itself. With it, he could mass-produce transformation technology infused with Sith alchemy. She looked directly into the recorder. If you're seeing this, Ben, I've gone to warn Azmath. The Galvin don't trust the Jedi enough to heed an official warning, but as the creator of the Omnitrix, Azmath might listen to me personally. So she's headed to Galvin Prime, Gwen said as the recording ended. Alone, without telling anyone. Because there's a traitor in the temple who would have reported it to Vilgax, Ben reasoned. It actually makes sense, in a reckless, going solo kind of way. Sounds like someone else I know, Gwen remarked with a raised eyebrow. Ben managed a small smile despite the circumstances. We need to get to Galvin Prime immediately. If Vilgax is targeting Asmatha's facility, and Kai's trying to warn them, she could be walking into a trap, Gwen finished. Especially if the traitor realized what she was doing and alerted Vilgax. They hurried from the room, almost colliding with Rook and Kevin in the corridor outside. We traced the relay, Kevin announced without preamble. Kai's message was forwarded to Galvin Prime, directly to Asmatha's communication network. We know, Ben replied. She left a message explaining everything. She thinks Vilgax is after something called the Forge of Forms, supposedly the original device used to create the transformation artifacts. And she went to warn Asmath without telling anyone because there's a spy in the temple, Gwen added. Rook's expression grew concerned. If that is true, then the attack on the temple may have been a diversion to steal the mask and create a political crisis, keeping us occupied while Vilgax makes his move on Galvin Prime. Exactly what I was thinking, Ben said. We need to get there as fast as possible. Is the rust bucket repaired? Basic systems only, Rook replied. The hyperdrive is functional but not at full capacity. It'll have to do, Ben decided. We leave immediately. Gwen, contact Grandpa Max and explain the situation. Kevin, grab whatever supplies we might need for a potential confrontation with Vilgax. Rook, prep the ship. As the others moved to their tasks, Ben found himself alone in the corridor for a moment. He looked down at the dormant Omnitrix, willing it to show some sign of life. Nothing. I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way, he murmured to himself. Just me, a lightsaber, and the Force. Oddly, the thought wasn't as disturbing as it might have been a few days ago. After Aner Trancel, after feeling Zscare's consciousness fighting for control within the ectoneurite transformation, there was something reassuring about being simply himself. Whatever awaited them on Galvin Prime, whether Vilgax, the mysterious forge, or answers about the Omnitrix's connection to ancient Force techniques, Ben would face it as a Jedi Master first, transformation abilities or not. He moved quickly to join the others, his mind already planning their approach to the highly secured Galvin homeworld. One thing was certain, time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. Galvin Prime gleamed in the viewport like a jewel of technology and innovation, its cities visible even from orbit as intricate patterns of light and structure. The small, swamp-covered world had become one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, despite, or perhaps because of, the diminutive stature of its inhabitants. Approaching Galvin Defense Perimeter, Rook announced from the pilot's seat. Transmitting Jedi identification codes now. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is Galvin Central Control. Your approach is not authorized. The planet is currently under security lockdown. Reverse course immediately. Ben leaned forward, activating the comm, Galvin Control, this is Jedi Master Ben Tennyson. We have urgent information regarding a security threat to Asmatha's facility. Request immediate clearance. A pause, then, authentication confirmed, Master Tennyson. However, the security lockdown remains in effect due to an incident at the primary scientific enclave. No vessels are permitted to land at this time. Ben exchanged concerned glances with his team. What kind of incident, he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. That information is classified, the controller replied stiffly. Please withdraw to a safe distance until the situation is resolved. Ben muted the transmission and turned to the others. Looks like we're too late. Vilgax has already made his move. Or Kai arrived and triggered some kind of security protocol, Gwen suggested hopefully. Either way, we need to get down there, Kevin said. Any ideas how to bypass a Galvin security lockdown? Because those little guys take their tech seriously. Ben thought for a moment, then smiled slightly. Actually, yes. Rook, take us to these coordinates. He entered a sequence into the navigation system. That will place us outside of Galvin City, in the swamplands, Rook observed with confusion. Exactly, Ben confirmed. There's an old entrance to Azmatha's facility that few people know about, a back door he showed me years ago in case of emergency. And you're just now mentioning this? Kevin asked incredulously. Azmath made me promise not to tell anyone unless absolutely necessary, Ben replied. I'd say this qualifies. Rook adjusted their course, bringing the rust bucket around to approach from the opposite side of the planet, away from the main defense grid. They descended through the atmosphere in stealth mode, skimming low over the vast swamps that covered much of Galvin Prime's surface. The good news is that most of their sensors focus on detecting ships approaching the cities, Ben explained as they flew. The swamps are less heavily monitored. And the bad news? Gwen asked. The swamps have their own natural defenses. Predatory species, toxic plants, and environmental hazards that the Galvin never bother to clear because they serve as an additional security layer. Wonderful, Kevin muttered. Rook brought the ship down in a small clearing surrounded by massive fungal growths. The landing was rougher than usual, the uneven ground and soft soil making it difficult to find stable footing for the landing gear. This is as close as I can get to the coordinates, he reported. The facility entrance should be approximately 2 kilometers in that direction. He pointed toward a particularly dense section of swamp. We go on foot from here, Ben decided, grabbing his gear. And stay alert. The native life forms here aren't particularly friendly. They disembarked into the humid swamp air, immediately sinking ankle-deep in the soft ground. Massive fungi towered overhead, their caps creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into a greenish glow. The air was thick with spores and the scent of decomposition. Reminds me of Felucia, Gwen observed, but smaller scale. And with more tech, Kevin added, pointing to nearly invisible sensor nodes embedded in some of the larger trees. Azmath has the entire area under surveillance, Ben confirmed. But the system is designed to alert rather than attack. As long as we don't do anything threatening, we should just register as visitors rather than intruders. They made their way through the swamp, following Ben's lead as he navigated the treacherous terrain. Occasionally, ripples in the murky water or rustling in the underbrush suggested they were being watched by the swamp's inhabitants, but nothing directly challenged their progress. After nearly an hour of difficult travel, Ben stopped before what appeared to be just another fungal mound. We're here. I don't see an entrance, Kevin said skeptically. Ben approached the mound and placed his palm against a specific spot on its surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a green light scanned his hand, and a section of the apparently organic structure slid aside, revealing a metallic doorway. Biometric security, Ben explained. Azmath programmed it to recognize me years ago, during one of the Omnitrix's maintenance sessions. The door opened to reveal a narrow passage sloping downward into the earth. Lights activated automatically as they entered, illuminating a surprisingly clean and well-maintained corridor that contrasted sharply with the wild swamp outside. This connects to the lower levels of Azmatha's primary facility, Ben explained as they descended. It was designed as an evacuation route, but it works just as well for getting in undetected. Why would Azmath give you access to his secret back door? Gwen asked curiously. Ben smiled slightly. He said it was because I had an unparalleled talent for being exactly where I shouldn't be when I'm most needed. I think it was his way of acknowledging that sometimes rules need to be broken in emergencies. The passage eventually opened into a larger tunnel equipped with a small transport platform. Ben activated the console, and the platform began moving smoothly along magnetic rails, carrying them deeper into the Galvin complex. So what's the plan once we get in? Kevin asked. We don't even know if Kai made it this far, or if Vilgax has already breached the facility. First, we locate Azmath, Ben decided. He'll know what's happening and where the forge is being kept. If Vilgax is after it, that's where we'll find him, and hopefully Kai. The transport slowed as they approached another doorway, this one much more substantial than the first. Multiple scanning beams swept over them before the massive door slid open, revealing a vast chamber filled with technology far beyond standard Republic science. Whoa, Kevin breathed, taking in the sight. I've seen Galvin tech before, but this is next level. Asmatha's private laboratory, Ben confirmed. Where the Omnitrix was designed and built. The chamber appeared empty of personnel, but active displays and running equipment suggested someone had been working there recently. Ben moved to a central console, trying to access the facility's security system. I can't get in, he admitted after several attempts. My clearance doesn't extend this far. Allow me, Rook offered, stepping forward. His fingers moved rapidly over the alien interface, bypassing security protocols with surprising efficiency. Since when do you know how to hack Galvin security systems? Ben asked, impressed. I took the liberty of studying Galvin encryption during our journey, Rook replied without looking up. Their patterns are complex but ultimately logical. After a moment, displays around the room activated, showing security feeds from throughout the facility. Most showed empty laboratories and corridors, but one caught Ben's attention immediately. There, he pointed to a feed showing a massive circular chamber where several figures were engaged in what appeared to be a standoff. Even on the small display, Vilgax's imposing form was unmistakable. Opposite him stood a small group that included the tiny figure of Asmath and, to Ben's relief, Kai. That's the central forge, Rook observed, zooming in on the chamber. According to the facility schematics, it's where Asmath conducts his most sensitive experiments. And likely where he's keeping the Forge of Forms, Gwen added. How do we get there? Rook highlighted a route through the facility on another display. This appears to be the most direct path. However, the security lockdown has sealed many of the connecting corridors. We'll have to override the lockdown protocols, Ben decided. Rook, can you do that from here? Negative. Such commands require alpha-level authorization, which only Asmath possesses. Then we'll have to do this the hard way, Ben said grimly. Force our way through if necessary. Or, Kevin suggested, examining another display, we could use the maintenance tunnels. Look, they run throughout the facility and bypass most of the security doors. Ben clapped him on the shoulder. Good thinking. Rook, can you get us access? Affirmative. Maintenance systems operate on a separate network with lower security requirements. He manipulated the controls, and a section of wall slid aside to reveal a narrow passage. This should lead us directly to the central forge level. The team moved quickly into the maintenance tunnel, which was barely tall enough for them to stand upright. Designed for Galvin workers, it felt cramped to the humanoid Jedi, but it provided an unobstructed path toward their destination. After navigating a complex network of tunnels, they reached a small access hatch that, according to Rook's calculations, should open near the central forge. Ben pressed his ear against it, listening for any sound of guards or alarm systems. Seems clear, he whispered. Everyone ready? Nods all around. Ben carefully opened the hatch and peered out into a dimly lit corridor. No sign of movement. They emerged one by one, Ben leading the way with his lightsaber in hand but not yet ignited. They had barely taken 10 steps when a familiar voice spoke from behind them. I was wondering when you'd arrive, Ben Tennyson. They spun to find a slender, purple-skinned woman with silver hair and glowing pink markings on her face. She leaned casually against the wall, a staff topped with a crystalline focus held loosely in one hand. Charmcaster, Kevin identified her, his voice tight with recognition. Still doing dirty work for Sith Lords. Nice to see you too, Kevin, she replied with a cold smile. It's been 5 years since you betrayed our master and ran to the Jedi. Ben noted how Kevin tensed at her words, old wounds clearly still raw. We don't have time for this, he said firmly. Vilgax is about to get his hands on something that could threaten the entire galaxy. Oh, I know exactly what he's after, Charmcaster replied. The Forge of Forms. Quite the prize, a device that can create artifacts capable of manipulating life essence itself. Her eyes gleamed with predatory interest. Almost as valuable as an Omnitrix. Her gaze fixed on Ben's wrist, noting the dormant state of the device. But it seems you're having technical difficulties. How unfortunate. Step aside, Charmcaster, Ben warned. We're not here for you. She laughed, a sound both musical and menacing. You misunderstand the situation, Tennyson. I'm not here to stop you. She pushed off from the wall and approached, twirling her staff. I'm here to make you an offer. Not interested, Kevin snapped, stepping forward. His hand touched a nearby panel, absorbing its metallic properties until his skin took on a silvery sheen. Charmcaster's attention shifted to him, her expression softening slightly. The offer wasn't for Ben. It was for you, Kevin. She took another step closer. Vilgax is a brute force solution. You and I both know there are more, elegant applications for the Forge. Applications that could free you from your constant struggle against your darker impulses. Kevin hesitated, his expression troubled. Don't listen to her, Gwen said firmly, moving to stand beside Kevin. She's trying to manipulate you, like she did before. Am I? Charmcaster challenged. Or am I offering a genuine solution? The Forge can create artifacts that modify essence itself. Imagine, Kevin, an artifact that could finally separate your darker nature from your consciousness. No more fighting against those impulses every day. Ben sensed the genuine temptation in Kevin's mind, the constant battle against dark side influences that had plagued him since his time as a Sith apprentice was his greatest ongoing struggle. We need to move, Ben reminded them quietly. Vilgax is with Azimuth right now. Kevin seemed to shake himself out of a trance. Nice try, he told Charmcaster. But I'll handle my problems my way, not with some magic artifact and definitely not with your help. For a moment, genuine disappointment flashed across Charmcaster's face. Then her expression hardened again. Your loss. Though I suppose I should thank you for leading me to the maintenance tunnels. They'll provide an excellent escape route once I've taken what I came for. Before anyone could react, she slammed her staff against the floor. A wave of energy pulsed outward, temporarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, she was gone. She was never working for Vilgax, Gwen realized. She's here for the Forge herself. And now she's heading for the Central Forge too, Ben added grimly. Come on, we need to hurry. They raced down the corridor, following the route Rook had memorized. As they rounded the final corner before the Central Forge's entrance, they encountered a squad of Galvin security drones, sophisticated floating robots armed with stun weapons. Halt! This area is restricted, the lead drone announced. Return to secured areas immediately or face forcible containment. Ben stepped forward, hands raised non-threateningly. We're here to help Azimuth. Vilgax is trying to steal the Forge of Forms. The drones paused, apparently processing this information. Then, unexpectedly, they moved aside. Proceed, the lead drone stated. Creator Azimuth has authorized your admission to the Central Forge. Surprised but grateful for the reprieve, the team hurried past the drones and through the massive doors into the Central Forge. The chamber beyond was vast, easily 100 meters across, with a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time representation of the galaxy. At the center stood a raised platform where an elaborate device hummed with power, presumably the Forge itself. And there, as the security feed had shown, a standoff was in progress. Vilgax, accompanied by Siphon and several battle droids, faced off against Azimuth, Kai, and a contingent of Galvin guards. The mask of transformation sat on a pedestal beside Vilgax, apparently already in his possession. Ben! Kai called when she spotted them entering. The mask, the Forever Knights delivered it to him. I know, Ben replied, unclipping his lightsaber as he approached. It's over, Vilgax. You're outnumbered now. The Sith Lord turned slowly, his expression darkening when he saw Ben and his team. Tennyson. Always interfering. His gaze moved to the Omnitrix. Still non-functional, I see. How does it feel to be incomplete? I manage, Ben replied evenly, igniting his lightsaber. The green blade hummed to life, casting its glow across the chamber. Step away from the forge. Vilgax laughed. You're too late. I already have what I need. He gestured to the mask beside him. The final component. With it and the forge, I can create a device capable of extracting and transferring force abilities on a scale never before imagined. You understand nothing of the forge's true purpose, Asmith spoke up, his diminutive form somehow commanding attention despite his size. It was not designed as a weapon, but as a means of understanding the fundamental connection between physical form and force sensitivity. Typical Galvin arrogance, Vilgax sneered. You create tools of unimaginable power, then hide behind claims of scientific purpose when others recognize their true potential. The forge is not leaving this facility, Asmith stated firmly. I'm afraid you're in no position to stop me, Vilgax replied. He raised a small device and pressed a button. Throughout the chamber, the Galvin guards suddenly froze, their bodies locked in place. A neural disruptor calibrated specifically for Galvin physiology, Siphon explained with evident pride. Quite effective, wouldn't you agree? Ben and his team tensed, preparing for combat, but Vilgax raised a hand. Before you attempt anything heroic, Tennyson, you should know that the disruptor affects all Galvin in the facility, including your precious Asmith. Any disruption to the signal will cause permanent neural damage to them all. Ben hesitated, weighing their options. His gaze met Asmith's, and the Galvin genius gave a subtle nod, as if to say, I trust your judgment. You won't get away with this, Vilgax, Ben said, playing for time while silently signaling his team to spread out around the chamber. Even if you take the forge, you need time to understand it, to build your device. We'll find you before you can activate it. Perhaps, Vilgax conceded. But I have certain advantages you lack. He gestured to Siphon, who activated a control panel near the forge. The device began to glow more intensely, its components reconfiguring. Such as a detailed understanding of how the forge works, provided by my inside source. Your spy in the archaeological division, Kai realized. Who was it? A new voice answered from behind them. I believe he's referring to me. They turned to see Charmcaster entering through another doorway, her staff now glowing with accumulated power. You! Kevin exclaimed. You're the spy in the Jedi Temple. She smiled coldly. The Jedi are so trusting of reformed dark side users. It made infiltrating the archaeological research team quite simple. Though I must admit, Night Green almost exposed me several times. She inclined her head slightly toward Kai. You're more perceptive than most Jedi. But you're working for yourself, not Vilgax, Gwen challenged. You just told us as much. A necessary deception, Charmcaster replied smoothly. Lord Vilgax and I have an arrangement. He gets the force extraction technology, and I get other benefits from the forge. Ben noticed the slight tension in Vilgax's posture. Clearly, the alliance was one of convenience rather than trust. That could be exploited. The forge is almost ready for transport, Siphon announced. Containment field at 80%. Excellent, Vilgax replied. Prepare the ship for immediate departure. Ben knew they had to act now, before the forge was secured for transport. He caught Gwen's eye and gave the subtlest of nods. In one fluid motion, Gwen raised her hands and unleashed a powerful force push, not at Vilgax or Charmcaster, but at the ceiling above them. The impact cracked the ornate dome, causing chunks of material to rain down on the chamber. The distraction was momentary but sufficient. Ben lunged forward, his lightsaber arcing toward the neural disruptor in Vilgax's hand. The Sith Lord reacted quickly, igniting his own lightsaber to parry the strike. Kevin, Rook, the forge. Ben called as he engaged Vilgax. Gwen, handle Charmcaster. Kai, get Asmith to safety. The chamber erupted into combat. Kevin, his body now covered in absorbed durasteel, charged towards Siphon and the forge. Rook provided covering fire with his proto-tool, keeping the battle droids at bay. Gwen faced off against Charmcaster, force abilities clashing against the dark side adepts' techniques. Ben focused entirely on Vilgax, knowing that the neural disruptor had to be their primary target. The Sith Lord fought with his usual brutal efficiency, his superior strength making each blocked strike a test of Ben's endurance. "You cannot win, Tennyson," Vilgax growled as their lightsabers locked. "Without the Omnitrix, you are merely a Jedi, and not even the strongest of your kind." "Maybe," Ben acknowledged, breaking the lock and spinning away from a powerful slash. "But I don't need to be the strongest. I just need to be good enough." He feinted left, then dropped into a low sweep that nearly caught Vilgax off guard. The Sith Lord jumped over the attack but was forced backward, away from the forge and the mask. Across the chamber, Kevin had reached Siphon and was grappling with the thin alien, trying to prevent him from completing the forge's containment sequence. Rook had disabled several battle droids but was now pinned down behind a console by concentrated fire from the remaining units. Gwen and Charmcaster were evenly matched, force abilities and dark side techniques cancelling each other out in spectacular displays of energy. Kai had managed to move Azimuth to a more protected position, though the Galvin remained paralyzed by the neural disruptor. Ben pressed his attack on Vilgax, looking for an opening to target the device. The Sith Lord seemed to realize his strategy and kept the hand holding the disruptor well away from the combat. "You're slowing down, Tennyson," Vilgax observed as he parried another strike. "Without your transformations to rely on, you lack endurance." Ben didn't waste breath responding to the taunt, though he knew there was some truth to it. His human form had limitations that his alien transformations often overcame. Still, he was a Jedi Master, trained in lightsaber combat from childhood. He had resources beyond physical stamina. Drawing deeper on the Force, Ben increased the speed and precision of his attacks, forcing Vilgax to focus more on defense. Each strike came closer to breaking through the Sith Lord's guard. Meanwhile, the situation around the forge had turned. Kevin had managed to overpower Siphon, slamming the alien into the control panel with enough force to damage both. The containment sequence interrupted, the forge's glow dimmed slightly. "No!" Vilgax roared, seeing his plan starting to unravel. In his moment of distraction, Ben landed a glancing blow to his arm, not enough to sever it but sufficient to make him drop the neural disruptor. The device clattered to the floor, and Ben immediately force-pulled it to his hand, deactivating it with a quick press. Around the chamber, the paralyzed Galvin guard suddenly came back to life, quickly moving to secure the area. Azimuth, freed from the paralysis, immediately took charge. "Activate Security Protocol Omega-7, he commanded. A new set of defenses emerged from the chamber walls, energy barriers that began to isolate sections of the room. Vilgax, seeing his advantage disappearing, made a desperate move. He lunged not for Ben but for the pedestal where the mask of transformation sat. Before anyone could stop him, he grabbed the artifact and placed it over his face. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The mask seemed to melt into Vilgax's features, and a pulse of dark energy radiated outward. Ben felt it through the Force, a twisting, unnatural sensation as the Sith Lord's presence seemed to expand and distort. "Yes." Vilgax's voice had changed, taking on an echoing, multi-layered quality. The power of transformation, combined with Sith techniques. His body began to shift, not changing species but somehow becoming more abstract. More conceptual than physical. "Stop him!" Azimuth shouted. The mask was never meant to be used by someone untrained in its principles. Ben charged forward, lightsaber raised, but Vilgax extended a hand, now elongated and almost ethereal, and unleashed a wave of force energy unlike anything Ben had ever encountered. It struck him full force, sending him flying across the chamber to crash against the far wall. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs and sent waves of pain through his body. As he struggled to rise, he saw Vilgax approaching the forge again, the mask giving him a terrifying new appearance, half physical, half energy, with tendrils of dark side power extending from his form like shadowy limbs. "The forge is mine," he declared, reaching for the device. "And with it, the power to extract and wield any force ability I desire." Before he could touch it, however, a small figure leaped onto the forge's control panel. Azimuth, his diminutive form somehow radiating authority, faced the transformed Sith Lord without fear. "You understand nothing, Vilgax," the Galvin genius said firmly. "The forge responds only to those who comprehend its true purpose, harmony between form and essence, not domination." Azimuth pressed a sequence of controls on the forge. The device's glow intensified, and it began to emit a high-pitched tone that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of reality. "What are you doing?" Vilgax demanded, hesitating as the forge's energy field expanded. "Activating the forge's primary function," Azimuth replied calmly. "Restoration of natural form." The energy field engulfed Vilgax, and the Sith Lord roared in pain as the mask began to separate from his face, the unnatural transformations reversing. He struggled against it, dark side energy clashing with the forge's power in a spectacular display. Ben, having recovered enough to stand, sensed an opportunity. He reached out through the force, not toward Vilgax or the mask, but toward the Omnitrix on his wrist. The dormant device had been exposed to multiple energy fields in the past few days, the dark side energies of Anar Trancel, Zscare's consciousness, and now the forge's restoration field. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, to his surprise and relief, the Omnitrix flickered to life, its surface glowing green once more. "Reactivation protocol initiated," the device announced in its synthesized voice. "Emergency function restored." Ben didn't hesitate. He activated the Omnitrix, cycling quickly to a transformation he hadn't used in years but that seemed perfect for this moment. The green light engulfed him, and when it faded, he had become feedback, a conductoid with the ability to absorb and redirect energy. "Perfect timing," he said, feeling the familiar rush of transformation power flowing through him. Without hesitation, he charged toward Vilgax, who was still struggling against the forge's energy field. "Tennyson," the Sith Lord growled, recognizing Ben despite the transformation. "Always hiding behind alien forms." "Not hiding," Feedback replied, reaching out with his antenna-like appendages. "Just using the right tool for the job." He connected to the energy field surrounding Vilgax and began to absorb the chaotic energies, both the forge's restoration field and the dark side power Vilgax was emitting. The conflicting forces flowed into him, and Feedback's natural abilities began to harmonize them. "What are you doing?" Vilgax demanded as he felt his power being drained. "Something I should have tried a long time ago," Ben answered. "Finding balance." As the energies flowed through him, Ben experienced something extraordinary, a moment of perfect clarity where he could sense the force from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The conductoid's natural energy manipulation abilities, combined with his Jedi training and the unique properties of the forge, had created a temporary state of heightened perception. The shifter's communion, he realized. This was what Zscare had described, the legendary state where transformation and force sensitivity achieved perfect harmony. In that moment of clarity, Ben understood exactly what to do. He redirected the absorbed energy not back at Vilgax, but into the mask itself, targeting the connections that bound it to the Sith Lord's face. The artifact responded, glowing intensely before separating from Vilgax with a sound like tearing fabric. The Sith Lord collapsed to his knees, his borrowed power dissipating as the mask clattered to the floor beside him. Ben maintained the feedback form, ready to absorb any final surge of energy. But Vilgax seemed genuinely weakened, his normally imposing presence diminished by the backlash of the failed transformation. "It's over, Vilgax," Ben said, approaching cautiously. "The mask and the forge stay here, where they belong." The Sith Lord looked up, his red eyes burning with hatred. "This is far from over, Tennyson." With surprising speed, he activated a device on his wrist. "Siphon." Emergency extraction. Before anyone could react, a transport beam enveloped Vilgax, Siphon, and, Ben noticed with alarm, Charmcaster, who had broken off her fight with Gwen to reach the extraction point. The three vanished, transported to a ship that must have been waiting in orbit. Should we pursue? Rook asked, already moving toward a communication console. Azimuth shook his head. Let them go. They failed to obtain the forge, and the mask is now safely in our possession. He turned to Ben with an appraising look. More importantly, I believe Master Tennyson has made a significant discovery today. Ben touched the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, reverting to his human form. The transformation felt different somehow, cleaner, more harmonious than before. The Shifter's Communion, he said. It's real. I felt it when I was absorbing those energies, a way of experiencing the Force from multiple perspectives at once. Indeed, Azimuth nodded. The original purpose of the Forge and the artifacts it created. Not to steal or manipulate Force abilities, but to understand them more completely through the experience of different forms. Which is why the Omnitrix resonates with the artifacts, Kai realized, joining them. They're based on the same fundamental principle, transformation as a means of understanding. Precisely, Azimuth confirmed. When I created the Omnitrix, I studied the ancient techniques preserved in these artifacts. Not to replicate their force-based approach, but to understand how transformation could be achieved through technology while maintaining the essence of the user. Ben looked at the Omnitrix, now functioning normally on his wrist. So all this time, I've been using a device based partly on ancient Jedi transformation techniques? The principles, yes, Azimuth clarified. Though the implementation is entirely different. The artifacts use the Force to transform essence and allow it to reshape physical form. The Omnitrix does the opposite, it transforms physical form while preserving essence. Which is why my Force sensitivity remains when I transform, Ben understood. Different but constant. And why Vilgax's plan was fundamentally flawed, Azimuth added. He sought to use the artifacts and the Forge to extract and transfer Force abilities, but that was never their purpose. They were created to expand understanding, not to steal power. The Galvin guards had secured the chamber by this point, with teams of scientists carefully containing both the Forge and the recovered mask. Gwen, Kevin, and Rook joined Ben, Kai, and Azimuth at the center of the platform. So what happens now? Gwen asked. Vilgax escaped, and he still has data from the other artifacts. But without the Forge or the mask, his Force extraction device can't be completed, Azimuth assured them. At least not in the form he intended. That doesn't mean he won't try something else, Kevin pointed out. And he still has Charmcaster working with him, or for him, or whatever their arrangement is. We'll deal with that when it comes, Ben decided. For now, we need to return to Coruscant. The Senate vote on alien technology in the Jedi Order is still pending, and we need to expose the Forever Knight's connection to Vilgax. Speaking of which, Kai said, turning to Azimuth, how did the Forever Knights get access to deliver the mask to Vilgax? Galvin's security is legendary. Azimuth's expression darkened. They didn't need to breach our security. They had help from within, a Galvin scientist named Albedo who has philosophical disagreements with our research ethics policies. He created a backdoor in our defense grid. Great, more traitors, Kevin muttered. Anyone else secretly working for the bad guys we should know about? Albedo has been apprehended, Azimuth assured them. And the security breach has been sealed. The Forge and the mask will remain here under the highest security protocols. Ben nodded, satisfied with this arrangement. If anyone could protect the artifacts, it was Azimuth and the Galvin. We should prepare for departure, Rook suggested. If we leave immediately, we can reach Coruscant before the Senate reconvenes. As the others moved to gather their equipment, Ben remained with Azimuth for a moment longer. There's something else, he said quietly. When I transformed into Ghost Freak on Anner Trancel, I encountered a consciousness within the transformation, ZS Scare. He seemed to know a lot about the artifacts and the shifter's communion. Azimuth nodded thoughtfully. Ectonurites have a unique relationship with consciousness and form. Their genetic memory is exceptionally powerful. It's likely that Zscare's consciousness, preserved in the Omnitrix's DNA sample, retained knowledge from ancient times when his species interacted with the artifact's creator. Is he still in there? Ben asked, glancing at the Omnitrix with concern. In a sense, Azimuth acknowledged. But the recalibration performed by the Forge's energy field should have reinforced the separation between transformation and consciousness. You shouldn't experience that kind of intrusion again under normal circumstances. Normal circumstances, Ben repeated with a slight smile. Those are rare in my line of work. Indeed, Azimuth agreed. Which is precisely why the Omnitrix has always been at its best in your hands, despite your creative approach to using it. Coming from Azimuth, this was high praise indeed. Ben felt a renewed appreciation for both the device and its creator. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. Azimuth waved a dismissive hand, characteristically uncomfortable with gratitude. Go. The Senate awaits, and politics waits for no one, not even Jedi Masters. Ben rejoined his team, and together they made their way back through the Galvin facility toward their ship. As they walked, Kai fell into step beside him. You experienced it, didn't you? She asked quietly. The shifter's communion. What was it like? Ben considered how to describe the sensation. It was clarity. Like seeing the Force from 1,000 perspectives simultaneously, understanding connections I never noticed before. He glanced at her. It felt right, somehow. Like something I've been working toward without realizing it. The ancient texts described it as the ultimate goal of transformation studies, Kai replied. A state where the practitioner transcends the limitations of a single form's perspective. Do you think that's why the Council has always been wary of the Omnitrix? Ben wondered. Because they sensed it might lead to this kind of expansion of Force perception? Possibly, Kai acknowledged. The Jedi tradition emphasizes stability and consistency in one's connection to the Force. The idea that transformation could enhance Force understanding challenges some fundamental assumptions. They reached the exit that would lead them back to the swamps where they had landed the rust bucket. Before they stepped outside, Ben paused. When this is over, after we deal with the Senate and the Forever Knights, I'd like to explore this further, he said. The connection between the Omnitrix and these ancient Force techniques. Maybe there's more to learn about the shifter's communion. Kai smiled, a sparkle of scholarly excitement in her eyes. I was hoping you'd say that. It could revolutionize our understanding of both transformation technology and Force techniques. Is that the archaeologist talking, or the Jedi? Ben asked with a smile. Both, she replied. And maybe something more. The moment was interrupted as Kevin called from ahead, if you two are done having your moment, we've got a Senate to convince and some Forever Knights to expose. Ben laughed, the tension of the past few days finally easing somewhat. Coming, he called back. To Kai, he added, to be continued. As they made their way back through the swamp to the rust bucket, Ben felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Omnitrix on his wrist was functioning properly again, but his experience had shown him that with or without it, he was a Jedi Master first and foremost. The transformations were a tool, not his identity. Yet the brief taste of the shifter's communion suggested possibilities he had never considered before, ways that his unique combination of Jedi training and transformation abilities might lead to new understandings of the Force itself. For now, though, they had a more immediate mission: return to Coruscant, expose the Forever Knights' connection to Vilgax, and ensure the Senate understood the true nature of the threat they faced. Politics might not be Ben's preferred battlefield, but sometimes the most important victories were won with words rather than lightsabers. As the rust bucket lifted off from Galvin Prime, Ben looked out at the stars with a sense of cautious optimism. Vilgax had escaped, but his primary plan had been thwarted. The Forge and the Mask were secure. And perhaps most importantly, Ben had gained a new perspective on his own unique path as both Jedi and wielder of the Omnitrix. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with renewed clarity and purpose. Chapter 3, Balance of Power. The Rust Bucket 3 streaked through hyperspace, the blue tunnel of light surrounding the ship as it raced toward Galvin Prime. Ben sat in the co-pilot's seat, the now functioning Omnitrix glowing its familiar green on his wrist. The device had stabilized after the encounter with the Forge, though Ben occasionally felt subtle differences in how it connected to his force sensitivity. ETA to Galvin Prime, 20 minutes, Rook announced from the pilot's seat, his fingers dancing across the controls with practiced precision. And we're sure Vilgax is heading there? Kevin asked, leaning against the doorframe of the cockpit. Kai nodded, studying a data pad. The trajectory of his escape vessel, combined with the data fragments we recovered from Siphon's damaged equipment on Anner Transel, all point to Galvin Prime as his destination. Makes sense, Gwen added, joining them. If the Forge of Forms is there, and it's the key to making his force extraction device work properly. Then we're in a race, Ben finished, his expression grim. And we can't afford to lose this one. The ship's communication system suddenly chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Rook activated it, and a blue hologram of Grandmaster Max appeared, his expression tense. Ben, we have an emergency situation on Coruscant, he said without preamble. The Forever Knights have launched a coordinated attack on the temple. They're claiming to be securing dangerous alien technology, but they're targeting the archives and the council chambers. What? Ben straightened in his seat. How did they get past temple security? They had help from inside, Max replied grimly. And they have support from several Senate security units. Driscoll is using the emergency powers granted during the lockdown to authorize the operation. This is a coup, Gwen realized. They're trying to seize control of the Jedi Order while we're off-world. Exactly, Max confirmed. I need you to split up. Ben, you, Rook and Kai continue to Galvin Prime to stop Vilgax. Gwen, Kevin, I need you back on Coruscant immediately. Ben hesitated, torn between missions. Grandpa, if the temple is under attack, you're the only one who can stop Vilgax, Max interrupted firmly. Especially now that the Omnitrix is functioning again. I have other Jedi defending the temple, but only you understand what Vilgax is truly after. After a moment's consideration, Ben nodded. All right. Gwen, Kevin, take the secondary shuttle. We'll continue to Galvin Prime. Already calculating the fastest route back to Coruscant, Kevin said, moving to the ship's navigation system. Be careful, Gwen told Ben as she prepared to leave. Vilgax was dangerous enough before. If he gets his hands on this forge thing, we'll stop him, Ben assured her. You just make sure there's still a Jedi Order for us to come back to. Within minutes, Gwen and Kevin had boarded the Rust Bucket's auxiliary craft, a smaller, faster shuttle designed for situations exactly like this. As it detached and reoriented toward Coruscant, Ben watched from the viewport, concerned for his cousin and friend warring with his focus on the mission ahead. They will be fine, Rook said, reading his expression. Gwen Tennyson and Kevin Levin are extremely capable. I know, Ben sighed. I just don't like splitting up the team. Sometimes the greatest victories require difficult choices, Kai observed. Your grandfather understands that. The auxiliary shuttle vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Rust Bucket to continue its approach to Galvin Prime alone. Ben turned his attention back to the mission, studying the limited information they had on Azmatha's facility and the mysterious Forge of Forms. So what exactly are we walking into? He asked Kai. What do we know about this forge? Kai brought up the research she'd compiled. According to the ancient texts, the Forge of Forms was created by a Jedi known only as the Shifter over 4,000 years ago. He believed that experiencing different forms was key to fully understanding the Force. Like the Omnitrix, Ben noted. Similar philosophy, different approach, Kai agreed. The Shifter created artifacts that used the Force to transform the user temporarily, allowing them to experience different perspectives. But the forge itself was his masterpiece, a device capable of creating new transformation artifacts or modifying existing ones. Which is why Vilgax wants it, Rook concluded. With the forge, he could mass-produce his force extraction technology. Ben frowned thoughtfully. But Azimuth must have known about this connection when he created the Omnitrix. Why would he design something so similar to these ancient force artifacts? That, said Kai, is the question we need answered. The ship dropped out of hyperspace, and the verdant world of Galvin Prime filled their viewscreen. Unlike many technologically advanced planets, the Galvin homeworld maintained vast swathes of untouched wilderness, partly for research purposes, partly because the diminutive inhabitants required less living space than most species. I'm detecting multiple ships in orbit, Rook reported, checking the sensors. Including one matching the known configuration of Vilgax's vessel. We're too late, Ben muttered. He's already here. But he may not have breached Azimuth's security yet, Kai pointed out. The Galvin are notoriously protective of their technology. Ben activated the ship's communication array. This is Jedi Master Ben Tennyson requesting emergency landing clearance at Azimuth's primary facility. Authorization code, Omnitrix Delta 7. For several tense moments, there was no response. Then a crisp, precise voice came through the speakers. Authorization confirmed, Master Tennyson. Proceed to landing platform 4. Be advised, we are currently experiencing a security situation. Azimuth has been notified of your arrival. A security situation, Ben repeated after the transmission ended. That's Galvin understatement for, we're under attack. Rook guided the rust bucket toward the coordinates provided, descending through wisps of cloud toward a vast complex nestled between dense swampland and rolling hills. Azimuth's facility was a marvel of Galvin architecture, graceful curved structures built in perfect harmony with the natural environment, yet clearly housing technology centuries ahead of most civilizations. As they approached, they saw evidence of the security situation, scorch marks on one section of the facility, and numerous Galvin security drones patrolling the perimeter. Looks like Vilgax didn't wait for an invitation, Ben observed grimly. The ship settled onto the designated landing platform, where a small reception committee awaited them, several Galvin guards and a familiar figure that Ben recognized as Myax, Azimuth's Chimera Sui Generis assistant. Master Tennyson, she greeted as they disembarked. Your timing is either impeccable or disastrous, depending on one's perspective. Vilgax is here, isn't he? Ben asked, though he already knew the answer. Yes, Myax confirmed. He breached the outer security perimeter approximately 47 minutes ago. Azimuth has sealed himself in the central laboratory with the forge, but Vilgax is systematically disabling our defenses. Where is he now? Rook asked, his proto-tool already configured for combat. Section 7, approaching the main security hub. Myax gestured toward a smoking section of the complex. If he gains control of that system, he'll be able to access the central laboratory. Then that's where we're going, Ben decided. He turned to Rook and Kai. Ready for this? They nodded, determination evident in their expressions. Myax, we need a direct route to Section 7, Ben said. And it would help if Azimuth could activate any remaining defenses to slow Vilgax down. Already done, the assistant replied, handing them small communication devices. These will give you access to secure areas. Azimuth says to remind you that the forge is not a weapon, it's a tool of understanding. Whatever Vilgax thinks it does, he's wrong. Noted, Ben acknowledged. Let's move. They raced through the facility, following Myax's directions. The interior was scaled for Galvin workers, but the main corridors were designed to accommodate larger visitors. Still, they had to duck through several doorways and navigate narrow passages that clearly weren't intended for humanoid traffic. As they approached Section 7, they began to encounter signs of battle, disabled security drones, damaged walls, and the occasional unconscious Galvin scientist who had been unfortunate enough to be in Vilgax's path. He's not being subtle, Kai remarked, kneeling to check on one of the fallen Galvin. Still alive, thankfully. Vilgax doesn't care about collateral damage, Ben replied grimly. Never has. They paused at an intersection, hearing the distinctive sound of energy weapons ahead. Rook peered around the corner and quickly pulled back. Siphon and approximately 8 battle droids, he reported. They are attempting to breach the security hub's main door. Ben considered their options. We need to take them by surprise. I'll transform and draw their attention. Rook, flank from the right. Kai, see if you can access the environmental controls to give us an advantage. He activated the Omnitrix, cycling through the available forms before selecting one. A flash of green light enveloped him, and when it faded, he had transformed into Diamondhead, a crystalline being capable of generating and manipulating silicon-based projectiles. Let's do this, he said, his voice deeper and resonating. Without waiting for a response, Diamondhead charged around the corner, immediately launching a barrage of crystal shards at the battle droids. 2 went down instantly, impaled through their central processors. Tennyson. Siphon shouted in alarm, spinning away from the security door. Lord Vilgax said you'd be coming. Then he should have brought more droids, Diamondhead replied, generating a crystal shield as the remaining robots opened fire. Rook appeared from another corridor, his proto-tool configured as a net launcher. With precise aim, he ensnared 2 more droids, immobilizing them. Siphon backed toward the security door, activating a personal shield. You're too late. Lord Vilgax has already passed through to the inner sanctum. I'm merely ensuring he won't be disturbed. Change of plans, Diamondhead told his teammates. He slammed his fist into the floor, sending a wave of crystal growth racing toward Siphon. It struck the villain's shield, not penetrating but forcing him backward against the wall. Rook, Kai, handle Siphon and the droids. I'm going after Vilgax. But the security door, Rook began. Diamondhead approached the massive door, transforming his hands into diamond-hard blades. I'll make my own door. With concentrated effort, he began cutting through the reinforced material, his crystalline form capable of slicing through even Galvin security measures given enough time and pressure. Hurry, Ben, Kai urged, igniting her lightsaber to deflect blaster fire from the remaining droids. If Vilgax reaches the central laboratory before us. Almost, there. Diamondhead grunted, forcing his blade deeper into the door. With a final push, he cut a rough circle large enough to pass through. Got it. He kicked the cut section inward and prepared to step through, only to be met by a blinding flash of energy from the other side. The force of the blast sent him flying backward, crashing into the opposite wall. Ben! Kai called out in alarm. Diamondhead struggled to his feet, his crystalline form cracked in several places but already beginning to regenerate. I'm okay. But that wasn't a security system. From the opening stepped Charmcaster, her staff glowing with pulsing energy. Hello again, she said with a cold smile. Vilgax thought you might try a direct approach. Charmcaster, Diamondhead acknowledged, reforming his damaged limbs. Still doing Vilgax's dirty work. Our arrangement is mutually beneficial, she replied smoothly. He gets the forge, I get other considerations. Like what? Kai demanded, her lightsaber held at the ready. What could possibly be worth helping him steal force abilities from others? Something flashed in Charmcaster's eyes, a moment of genuine emotion breaking through her composed exterior. Knowledge. Power. Freedom from limitations. She twirled her staff, energy crackling around it. Things the Jedi claim to value but actually fear. Without warning, she unleashed a barrage of energy bolts, forcing them to scatter. Diamondhead formed crystal shields to block the attack while Rook returned fire with his proto-tool. Go! Kai shouted to Ben. Get through to the inner sanctum. We'll handle Charmcaster. Diamondhead hesitated, reluctant to leave his friends. That's an order. Kai added, deflecting one of Charmcaster's bolts back at her with her lightsaber. Stop Vilgax, that's the priority. Making his decision, Diamondhead charged toward the opening he'd created, forming crystal barriers to deflect Charmcaster's attacks as he passed. The dark side adept tried to block his path, but Rook provided covering fire, forcing her to defend herself instead. Diamondhead squeezed through the opening and found himself in a long corridor that sloped downward into the heart of the facility. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of battle as Rook and Kai engaged Charmcaster and the remaining droids. "Hang on, guys," he muttered, transforming back to his human form to navigate the narrower sections of the passage more easily. The Omnitrix would need time to recharge after the transformation, but Ben's Jedi abilities would suffice for now. He raced down the corridor, following signs of Vilgax's passage, disabled security measures, damaged doors, and the occasional unconscious Galvin security officer. The path led deeper into the facility, eventually opening into a vast circular chamber filled with equipment that Ben could only assume related to Omnitrix research. And there, at the far side, a massive door stood partially open, the entrance to what must be Azmatha's central laboratory. Beside it lay several disabled Galvin security drones, evidence of Vilgax's recent passage. Ben approached cautiously, lightsaber in hand but not yet ignited. He reached out with his force senses, trying to determine what awaited him beyond the door. He felt Azmatha's familiar presence, focused, brilliant, and currently very concerned. And another, darker presence that could only be Vilgax, radiating cold determination and simmering rage. Taking a deep breath, Ben slipped through the partially opened door into the central laboratory. The space beyond was breathtaking, a massive dome-shaped chamber with a transparent ceiling revealing the Galvin sky above. In the center stood a pedestal supporting what appeared to be a complex device composed of rotating rings and pulsing crystals, the Forge of Forms. And before it, facing off in what appeared to be a tense standoff, were Azmath and Vilgax. "The Forge responds only to those who understand its true purpose," Azmath was saying, his diminutive form somehow not diminished by Vilgax's looming presence. "Your attempts to corrupt it will fail. Your arrogance blinds you, Galvin," Vilgax replied, his voice echoing in the vast space. "I understand its purpose better than you think. Transformation, adaptation, evolution, the ability to transcend limitations. That is what I seek." "You seek to steal abilities that aren't yours," Ben interrupted, stepping forward with his lightsaber now ignited. "That's not transcendence, Vilgax. It's theft." The Sith Lord turned, his eyes narrowing at the sight of Ben. "Tennyson. Always interfering where you're not wanted." He gestured to the forge. "Do you even understand what this is? What it represents?" "I know it's not a weapon," Ben replied, moving closer with his lightsaber at the ready. "And I know you're trying to turn it into one." "Such limited thinking," Vilgax sneered. "This device represents the ultimate understanding of the connection between physical form and force sensitivity. The ancient Jedi who created it saw beyond the narrow dogma of your order." "Then tell me," Ben challenged, circling to position himself between Vilgax and the forge. "What do you think it does?" A cold smile spread across Vilgax's face. "It doesn't just create artifacts that allow transformation. It can rewrite the very rules of how life forms connect to the Force." He extended a hand toward the device. "With it, I can create a new order, one where Force abilities are not limited to those born with them, but can be shared, or taken. Or you could use it to understand perspectives beyond your own," Azmath interjected. "Which was its original purpose?" Vilgax ignored him, his focus entirely on Ben. "Think about it, Tennyson. How many times have you transformed with the Omnitrix, experiencing different forms, different abilities? You've had a taste of what I seek, the freedom to transcend the limitations of a single form. The difference," Ben replied, "is that I don't steal those abilities from others. The Omnitrix is based on freely given DNA samples, not extracted powers." A semantic distinction, Vilgax dismissed. "The end result is the same, You wield powers that weren't originally yours. Ben felt a flicker of doubt at Vilgax's words. There was a twisted logic to his argument, one that touched on questions Ben had wrestled with himself over the years. The Omnitrix did give him abilities beyond those he would naturally possess. Ben, Azimuth said sharply, sensing his hesitation. The Omnitrix was designed as a tool of understanding, not domination. Just like the Forge. Vilgax seeks to pervert their purpose. Enough talk, Vilgax declared, igniting his lightsaber. The red blade hummed to life, casting an ominous glow across his armored form. The Forge will be mine, one way or another. He lunged forward with surprising speed, forcing Ben to parry a vicious overhead strike. The clash of their blades sent sparks flying across the laboratory as Azimuth scrambled to safety, moving toward a control console near the Forge. You've improved your lightsaber technique, Vilgax observed as they exchanged blows. But without your transformations, you're still outmatched. As if on cue, the Omnitrix beeped, signaling it had recharged. Ben allowed himself a small smile. Who said I need transformations to beat you? He feinted left, then dropped and swept Vilgax's legs. The Sith Lord jumped over the attack but was forced back, giving Ben space to activate the Omnitrix. In a flash of green light, he transformed into Jetray, an aerodynamic alien with neuroshock capabilities. Speed over strength this time, he said, taking to the air and firing a series of neuroshock blasts at Vilgax. The Sith Lord deflected most with his lightsaber but was struck by several, momentarily staggering him. Ben used the opportunity to swoop past, drawing Vilgax away from the Forge. Azimuth, he called. Secure the Forge. The Galvin genius was already working at the control console, his tiny hands moving with incredible speed across the controls. I'm activating the containment protocols, he replied. But I need time. Time is something you don't have, Vilgax growled, recovering from the neuroshock blasts. He reached to his belt and withdrew a small spherical device. Recognize this, Tennyson. Ben did, it was one of the stolen artifacts, the Essence Splitter. Put that down, Vilgax. You don't understand what it does. Oh, but I do, the Sith Lord replied with a cruel smile. He activated the device, and it began to pulse with an eerie light. The Essence Splitter doesn't just divide consciousness from body, it can project consciousness into other vessels. Like this. He directed the artifact toward one of Azimuth's nearby research drones. The machine suddenly jerked to life, its optical sensors glowing with the same eerie light as the artifact. It turned toward Azimuth and lunged, metal claws extended. Ben dived to intercept, firing neuroshock blasts at the drone. It absorbed the energy without slowing, forcing Ben to physically tackle it away from Azimuth. He's using the artifact to control the lab equipment. Azimuth shouted in alarm. The Essence Splitter was never meant to interface with technology. More drones activated around the laboratory, all turning toward Azimuth and the Forge. Ben realized Vilgax's strategy: divide their attention, force Ben to protect Azimuth while Vilgax moved on the Forge himself. Thinking quickly, Ben touched the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, transforming again. This time he became Upgrade, a galvanic mechamorph with the ability to merge with and control technology. Two can play at that game, he said, his voice taking on a slightly electronic quality. He stretched his liquid metal form across the nearest drone, merging with it completely. Through his technopathic abilities, he could feel Vilgax's influence via the Essence Splitter, a cold, foreign presence trying to control the machine. But as Upgrade, Ben had the advantage. He asserted control over the drone, then extended tendrils toward the others, creating a network that allowed him to counter Vilgax's commands with his own. One by one, the drones returned to normal operation, their systems purged of the Sith Lord's influence. Impossible. Vilgax snarled, pouring more power into the artifact. You're using it wrong, Ben replied through his merged form. These artifacts were designed to expand understanding, not as weapons. Vilgax's response was a roar of frustration as he abandoned the failing strategy and charged directly toward the forge. Azimuth had nearly completed the containment sequence, a shimmering energy field beginning to form around the device. Ben detached from the drone and flowed across the laboratory floor with upgrades liquid speed, intercepting Vilgax just before he reached the pedestal. He formed a barrier between the Sith Lord and the forge, his malleable body absorbing the impact of Vilgax's charge. "You won't stop me this time, Tennyson," Vilgax declared, his lightsaber slashing through Upgrade's form. Ben felt pain as the energy weapon disrupted his molecular structure, but Upgrade's ability to reform allowed him to recover quickly. He wrapped tendrils around Vilgax's arms, trying to immobilize him. "The containment field is at 70%. Azimuth called. "Keep him away for 30 more seconds." Vilgax broke free of Ben's hold with a surge of strength, his lightsaber carving patterns of disruption through Upgrade's form. Each cut hurt, but Ben maintained his position between Vilgax and the forge. "You don't even understand what you possess," Vilgax accused, frustration evident in his voice. "The Omnitrix, the forge, tools that could reshape the galaxy, and you use them for what? Maintaining a stagnant order?" "Better than your version of change," Ben retorted, forming hardened projectiles from his body and launching them at Vilgax. The Sith Lord deflected them with practiced ease. "My version would bring balance," Vilgax insisted. "Why should force sensitivity be limited to random chance of birth? Why shouldn't such power be available to all worthy enough to claim it?" "Because it's not yours to redistribute," Ben replied, still blocking his path to the forge. "The Force isn't a resource to be harvested and controlled." Vilgax's eyes narrowed. "Says the Jedi who changes his very species at will. How many abilities have you borrowed through that device on your wrist? How is that different from what I seek?" The question struck a nerve, making Ben hesitate just long enough for Vilgax to land a powerful blow. His lightsaber cut deep into Upgrade's form, the pain forcing Ben to revert to his human form as the Omnitrix timed out. He collapsed to one knee, his Jedi robe smoking where the lightsaber had struck. Vilgax loomed over him, red blade poised for a killing strike. "The difference," Ben gasped, looking up at his opponent, "is consent. The DNA in the Omnitrix was freely given. You want to take by force." "Semantics," Vilgax dismissed. "Power recognizes only itself, not how it was acquired." 90% containment," Azimuth announced. "Just a few more seconds." Vilgax turned toward the forge, seeing the containment field nearing completion. With a snarl of rage, he unleashed a powerful force push that sent Ben sliding across the floor, then charged toward the pedestal. Ben reached out through the force, not toward Vilgax but toward the essence splitter the Sith Lord had dropped during their struggle. The artifact flew to his hand, and acting on instinct rather than plan, Ben activated it. Unlike Vilgax, who had tried to use it to control technology, Ben directed it toward its intended purpose, connecting with the essence of another being. But instead of trying to project his consciousness outward, he turned it inward, creating a momentary split within himself. The effect was immediate and disorienting. Ben felt his consciousness divide, not painfully, but like a single light separating into its spectrum of colors. Through the artifact's power, he experienced his own force sensitivity from outside himself, seeing the connections and patterns that normally remained intuitive rather than explicit. "What are you doing?" Vilgax demanded, pausing his charge as he sensed the disturbance in the force. Ben didn't answer immediately, too caught up in the extraordinary experience. Through the essence splitter's effect, he could see how his connection to the force intertwined with the Omnitrix's transformative capabilities, complementary systems that enhanced each other in ways he had never fully appreciated. "I'm understanding," he finally replied, rising to his feet with renewed purpose. "Isn't that what these artifacts were meant for?" The Omnitrix, having reset after his reversion, suddenly began to glow with an unusual color, not the standard green but a shifting blue-white that pulsed in sync with the essence splitter. "What's happening?" Vilgax demanded, his attention divided between Ben and the nearly contained forge. The shifter's communion, Azimuth answered, his eyes wide with scientific curiosity despite the danger. Theoretical until now, a state where transformation and force sensitivity achieve perfect harmony. Ben felt the Omnitrix respond to his divided consciousness, creating a feedback loop with the essence splitter. Energy flowed between the two, and suddenly he understood what to do. He activated the Omnitrix, but instead of selecting a specific alien, he allowed his heightened awareness to guide the selection. The transformation that followed was unlike any he had experienced before. The green flash enveloped him, but when it cleared, Ben stood in a form that wasn't any single alien from the Omnitrix catalog. Instead, he appeared as a synthesis, primarily humanoid but with elements from multiple transformations. His skin had the adaptive quality of upgrade, while his musculature showed the density of 4 arms. Energy crackled around him like feedback, and his senses were heightened like wildnuts. Impossible, Vilgax breathed, momentarily stunned by the sight. The shifter's communion allows perfect harmony between form and essence, Azimuth explained, fascination overriding fear. He's not just transforming his body, he's experiencing the force through multiple perspectives simultaneously. Ben looked at his transformed hands, feeling the extraordinary power flowing through him. But more than the physical change, he felt a profound shift in his perception of the force. It wasn't stronger, exactly, but clearer, more nuanced, as if he was hearing a symphony when before he'd only heard single instruments. One last chance, Vilgax, he said, his voice resonating with harmonics from his multiple aspects. Stand down. The Sith Lord hesitated, clearly recognizing the threat this new form represented. Then his expression hardened with determination. Never. The forge will be mine. He made a final desperate lunge toward the pedestal, lightsaber extended to disrupt the nearly complete containment field. Ben moved to intercept, his enhanced form allowing him to cross the distance with impossible speed. Their clash at the pedestal sent waves of energy rippling through the laboratory. Vilgax's lightsaber struck Ben's arm, but instead of cutting through, it met the silicon-based durability of diamond head structure. Ben countered with a strike that carried the electrical properties of Shocksquatch, sending Vilgax stumbling backward with convulsions of energy. Containment complete. Azimuth announced as the field fully enveloped the forge. The device is secure. No. Vilgax roared, redoubling his attack on Ben in fury. His lightsaber became a blur of red energy, striking from multiple angles with the full force of his rage behind each blow. But in his harmonized state, Ben could perceive the attacks before they landed, responding with defenses drawn from his multiple forms. Where Vilgax struck with strength, Ben countered with flexibility. Where the Sith Lord used speed, Ben responded with precision. The battle moved across the laboratory, equipment shattering under the force of their exchange. Vilgax, realizing he was outmatched in direct combat, changed tactics. He reached out through the force, targeting not Ben but Azimuth, lifting the small Galvin into a force choke. Surrender, or watch your mentor die, he threatened. Ben didn't hesitate. Drawing on the energy projection abilities of feedback, he directed a targeted pulse that broke Vilgax's force grip, sending Azimuth tumbling safely behind a console. You've lost, Vilgax, Ben stated, advancing on the Sith Lord. The forge is contained, your allies are defeated, and you're outmatched. For a moment, it seemed Vilgax might continue fighting regardless. Then, with calculated precision, he deactivated his lightsaber and straightened to his full imposing height. This battle, perhaps, he acknowledged coldly. But not the war, Tennyson. What you've demonstrated today only proves my point, transformation and force sensitivity together create power beyond ordinary limits. Power that shouldn't be monopolized by the Jedi. It's not about power, Ben replied. It's about understanding. Something you've never bothered to pursue. Vilgax's eyes narrowed. We shall see whose understanding prevails in the end. Without warning, he activated a device on his gauntlet. A transport beam began to materialize around him, an emergency extraction system. This isn't over, Tennyson, he declared as his form began to shimmer. Not while the Omnitrix exists. Not while you continue to wield power you didn't earn. Ben lunged forward, trying to disrupt the transport, but Vilgax had timed it perfectly. His form dissolved into energy, beaming away to a ship that must have been waiting in orbit. As the transport beam faded, Ben felt the harmonized transformation beginning to destabilize. The essence splitter's effect was temporary, and without it maintaining the split consciousness, the Omnitrix couldn't sustain the multi-aspect form. With a flash of green-blue light, he reverted to his human form, the extraordinary experience of the shifter's communion fading like a vivid dream upon waking. The essence splitter in his hand grew dark, its energy temporarily depleted. Ben! Kai's voice called from the laboratory entrance. She and Rook rushed in, both showing signs of their battle with Charmcaster. Are you alright? We saw Vilgax's ship breaking orbit. I'm fine, he assured them, though he felt physically drained from the experience. Vilgax escaped, but the forge is secure. Charmcaster also escaped, Rook reported grimly. She used some form of teleportation spell when we had her cornered. They were working together all along, Kai concluded. But what happened here? We felt a massive disturbance in the force. Before Ben could answer, Azimuth approached, looking at him with renewed interest. He achieved the shifter's communion, a theoretical state that even the Forge's creator only documented but never fully realized. It was. Ben searched for words to describe the experience. Like seeing the Force from 1,000 perspectives at once. Understanding connections that I've always felt intuitively but never consciously recognized. Remarkable, Azimuth said, studying the Omnitrix. The device responded to the divided consciousness created by the essence splitter, allowing for a harmonized transformation instead of a single species change. Could he do it again? Kai asked, her scholarly interest evident despite her concern. Azimuth shook his head. Not without significant modifications to the Omnitrix, and even then, it would be dangerous to attempt regularly. The shifter's communion was theoretical for good reason. Maintaining divided consciousness while preserving core identity requires extraordinary mental discipline. It felt right, though, Ben said quietly. Not just powerful, but balanced. Like finding a missing piece of a puzzle I didn't know was incomplete. A beeping from Rook's communicator interrupted the moment. It's from Gwen, he reported, activating the device. Gwen's holographic form appeared, looking battle-worn but determined. Ben. We've secured the temple archives, but the situation is escalating. The Senate is in emergency session, the Forever Knights are pushing for a vote of no confidence in the Jedi Council. We're on our way, Ben assured her. The forge is secure, and Vilgax has retreated. What about Driscoll? That's the problem, Gwen replied, her expression grim. He's presenting evidence that allegedly proves the Jedi have been experimenting with dangerous transformation technology for centuries. He's calling for oversight of all Jedi artifacts and technology, especially the Omnitrix. Ben exchanged concerned glances with Kai and Rook. How long do we have? The vote is scheduled for 6 hours from now, Gwen answered. Kevin is working with Grandpa Max to stall, but we need you here, Ben. The Senate needs to understand what's really happening. We'll leave immediately, Ben decided. Rook, prep the rust bucket for maximum speed. As Rook moved to comply, Azimuth cleared his throat. Perhaps I can be of assistance, he offered. My testimony regarding the Forge and Vilgax's intentions could provide valuable context for the Senate. You do that? Ben asked, surprised. Azimuth rarely left Galvin Prime, and almost never involved himself in galactic politics. The Omnitrix is my creation, Azimuth replied simply. I won't stand by while it's mischaracterized for political gain. We'll need all the help we can get, Kai agreed. This isn't just about the Omnitrix anymore, it's about the relationship between the Jedi Order and the Republic. Ben nodded, determination replacing exhaustion. Let's go save the Jedi Order, then. The rust bucket streaked through hyperspace, pushing its engines to the limit. In the main cabin, Ben, Kai, Rook, and Azimuth, who had insisted on a specially designed hovering platform to compensate for his small stature, reviewed the situation on Coruscant based on Gwen and Kevin's updates. The Forever Knights have been planning this for months, Kai observed, studying the evidence they'd compiled. The attacks on the temples, stealing the artifacts, it was all designed to create a crisis that would justify Senate intervention in Jedi affairs. With Vilgax providing the technical expertise through Siphon and Charmcaster, Rook added. A most effective alliance. But why? Ben asked, frowning. The Forever Knights have always been anti-alien, but this level of coordination with a Sith Lord goes beyond ideology. Power, Azimuth stated simply. Driscoll seeks to control the Jedi Order through political means while Vilgax pursues the technological approach. Different methods toward the same goal, minimizing the independence of Force users. Which brings us to the uncomfortable truth, Kai said, looking directly at Ben. The Omnitrix has always represented exactly what both of them fear and desire, the ability to transcend natural limitations. Ben glanced at the device on his wrist, contemplating its significance with new understanding after experiencing the Shifter's communion. The Omnitrix wasn't just a scientific achievement, was it, Azimuth? He asked quietly. There was another purpose behind its creation. The Galvin genius was silent for a moment, his large eyes studying Ben with careful consideration. Finally, he nodded. The Omnitrix was designed with multiple purposes, he acknowledged. Scientific understanding, preservation of species, promotion of cross-species empathy. But yes, there was another motivation I rarely discuss. Which was? Kai prompted when Azimuth paused. Balance, the Galvin replied. Throughout galactic history, Force users have held disproportionate influence due to their unique abilities. While many use this power responsibly, there have been periods where neither Jedi nor Sith provided adequate checks on each other's authority. So the Omnitrix was created as a counterweight, Ben realized. A way for non-Force users to access comparable power. A contingency, more accurately, Azimuth clarified. A technological approach to abilities that had previously been the exclusive domain of those born Force-sensitive. The revelation hung in the air, its implications rippling through Ben's understanding of his role as both Omnitrix wielder and Jedi. Does the Council know this? Kai asked, her expression troubled. Some may have suspected, Azimuth replied. But it was never explicitly stated. The Jedi Order has generally maintained a cautious relationship with advanced technology, particularly anything that might affect or mimic Force abilities. Which explains their persistent discomfort with the Omnitrix, despite all the good it's done, Ben said, pieces falling into place. They sensed, even if they couldn't articulate, that it represented a potential challenge to Force users' unique position. A fear that Driscoll is now exploiting, Rook observed. By framing the Omnitrix as dangerous alien technology rather than what it truly represents, a tool for balance. The ship's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission. Ben activated it, and Gwen's hologram appeared once more. We've managed to delay the vote by 2 hours, she reported. But Driscoll has gained significant support. He's showing footage of your battle on Anor Trancel, specifically the Ghost Freak transformation, as evidence of dangerous and unstable alien influence within the Jedi Order. How did he get that footage? Ben demanded. Charmcaster must have been monitoring, Kai suggested. Remember, she had access to Jedi communication channels through her cover in the Archaeological Division. The situation at the temple is stabilizing, Gwen continued. The Forever Knights' attack was repelled, but the political damage is done. The Senate is now questioning Jedi security protocols and artifact storage. We'll be arriving within the hour, Ben assured her. Have Grandpa Max arrange for us to address the Senate directly before the vote. As the transmission ended, Ben turned to his companions with renewed determination. We need a strategy. This isn't just about defending the Omnitrix anymore, it's about preserving the Jedi Order's independence while acknowledging legitimate concerns. A diplomatic challenge worthy of a Jedi Master, Kai remarked with a slight smile. And one that may require a perspective only you can provide, Azimuth added thoughtfully. Perhaps your experience with the Shifter's Communion offers insights relevant to this political impasse. Ben considered this, recalling the extraordinary clarity he had felt during that brief harmonized state. Balance, he said finally. That's what it comes down to. Not Jedi dominating or being controlled by the Republic, not technology versus Force abilities, but finding the balance between them. Rook nodded approvingly. A most logical approach. And one that might just save the Order, Kai agreed, if the Senate is willing to listen. As the rust bucket approached Coruscant, Ben found himself contemplating how his unique position, straddling the worlds of Jedi tradition and advanced alien technology, had prepared him for exactly this moment. Perhaps this had always been his true purpose, beyond fighting villains or mastering transformations. Balance. Understanding. Harmony between seemingly opposed forces. The very essence of what both the Jedi and the Omnitrix, in their different ways, had always represented. The Senate chamber was packed to capacity, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for what many were calling the most significant vote on Jedi affairs in generations. The massive circular hall hummed with tension as Ben, Kai, Rook, and Azimuth were escorted to a speaking platform by Senate guards. From another entrance, Ben spotted Gwen, Kevin, and Grandmaster Max joining them, all showing signs of the recent battle but standing tall and dignified in their Jedi robes. Cutting it close, cuz, Gwen whispered as their platforms connected. Had to make a dramatic entrance, Ben replied with a small smile, though his eyes remained serious as he surveyed the assembled senators. Driscoll occupied a prominent position. The Forever Knights delegation expanded since Ben had last attended a Senate session. The human senator's expression showed momentary surprise at seeing Azimuth present, quickly masked by practiced political composure. Supreme Chancellor Calix, a respected Uxorite known for her fairness, called the session to order. Today we address the motion put forward by Senator Driscoll regarding oversight of Jedi technological artifacts and implementation of security protocols for potentially dangerous alien devices within the Order. Before we proceed to a vote, Master Tennyson has requested the opportunity to address the Senate. Murmurs spread through the chamber as their speaking platform moved to the central position. Ben stepped forward, conscious of the thousands of eyes upon him. Senators of the Galactic Republic, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Recent events have raised legitimate questions about the relationship between the Jedi Order and the Republic we serve. Questions about oversight, transparency, and the nature of the technologies we employ. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the chamber before continuing. These questions deserve honest answers. But first, we must understand the true nature of the crisis we face. The attacks on Jedi temples, the theft of ancient artifacts, the assault on the Jedi Temple itself, these were not random events. They were coordinated actions by an alliance between the Forever Knights and Sith Lord Vilgax. Shocked exclamations erupted across the chamber. Driscoll immediately rose to object. These are baseless accusations. The Forever Knights have acted only to protect the Republic from dangerous alien influences within the Jedi Order. I have evidence proving otherwise, Ben countered calmly, nodding to Rook, who activated a holographic display. The projection showed captured security footage from Galvin Prime, Siphon conferring with Forever Knight commanders, and later, Vilgax and Driscoll in direct communication. The timestamp and authentication codes were clearly visible, making the footage difficult to dismiss. This was recovered from Vilgax's base on Anor Trancel, Ben explained as the Senate viewed the damning evidence. Senator Driscoll has been working with a known Sith Lord to orchestrate a crisis that would justify political control over the Jedi Order. Driscoll's face flushed with anger. Fabricated. This so-called evidence is authenticated by Galvin security protocols, Azimuth interrupted, his small form nevertheless commanding attention as his platform rose slightly. I am Azimuth, creator of the Omnitrix and first thinker of the Galvin. I personally verify the authenticity of this evidence. The endorsement of the galaxy's acknowledged greatest intellect sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. Driscoll seemed to realize his position was weakening, but rallied quickly. Even if certain elements within the Knights acted improperly, that doesn't invalidate the core concern, he insisted. The Jedi Order harbors dangerous technologies that threaten Republic security, the Omnitrix being the most prominent example. The Omnitrix is not a weapon, Ben stated firmly. It has never been a weapon. It is a tool of understanding, designed to promote empathy between species and preserve genetic diversity. A tool that gives you powers no single being should possess. Driscoll countered. The ability to transform into different species at will, combined with force sensitivity, it creates an unacceptable concentration of power. This argument found traction with some senators, their concerned nods visible throughout the chamber. Ben recognized the fear underlying Driscoll's appeal, the same fear that had driven the Forever Knights' anti-alien agenda for years. It was time for complete honesty. You're right, Ben acknowledged, surprising everyone. The Omnitrix does represent a unique concentration of abilities. And yes, in the wrong hands, it could be dangerous, as could any Jedi's lightsaber, any senator's influence, any world's military might. He touched the device on his wrist, the familiar weight a reminder of both privilege and responsibility. But what Senator Driscoll doesn't tell you, what Vilgax doesn't want you to understand, is that the Omnitrix was designed precisely to create balance in a galaxy where Force users like myself would otherwise have disproportionate influence. Azimuth nodded, moving his platform forward. Master Tennyson speaks the truth. The Omnitrix was created, in part, as a technological counterweight to Force-based abilities. A means for non-Force sensitive beings to access comparable capabilities through different means. This revelation created a stir among the senators, who had never heard the Omnitrix described in such terms. Even Grandmaster Max looked surprised, though he quickly masked his reaction. The recent conflict centered around artifacts that represent the intersection of technology and Force sensitivity, Ben continued. Vilgax sought to weaponize these artifacts, to create a device capable of stealing Force abilities from others. He failed, but his attempt highlights the real issue we should be addressing. Which is? Chancellor Calix prompted when Ben paused. Balance, Ben answered simply. Not just between the Jedi Order and the Republic, but between different approaches to power, technological, political, Force-based. Each has its place, each has its proper limits. He gestured to his companions, Jedi, technologist, and Galvin scientists standing together. On Galvin Prime, I experienced something extraordinary, a state the ancient Jedi called the Shifter's Communion. A perfect harmony between transformation technology and Force sensitivity. It showed me that these different paths aren't meant to compete or dominate each other, but to complement and check each other. Fine words, Driscoll interjected, but they don't address the security concerns. I'm coming to that, Ben assured him with unexpected courtesy. Because you're right about one thing, Senator. The Jedi Order has operated with significant autonomy regarding artifact storage and technological research. Recent events demonstrate that our security protocols can be improved. This concession clearly surprised Driscoll, who had expected continued resistance. Therefore, Ben continued, I propose the establishment of a joint oversight committee for Force-sensitive artifacts and advanced technologies. Not to control the Jedi Order, but to ensure transparency and shared responsibility for potentially powerful devices. Grandmaster Max stepped forward to stand beside Ben. The Jedi Council supports Master Tennyson's proposal. While we must maintain independence in matters of Force training and Jedi operations, we recognize that artifacts of great power are the heritage of all beings, not just Force users. Chancellor Calix leaned forward with interest. And who would serve on this oversight committee? Representatives from the Jedi Order, the Senate, and the scientific community, Ben proposed. Including non-Force sensitive experts who can provide perspective the Jedi might lack. And the Omnitrix? Driscoll demanded, unwilling to let his primary target escape scrutiny. Would it be subject to this committee's oversight? Ben exchanged glances with Azimuth, who gave a subtle nod. The Omnitrix was entrusted to me personally, Ben replied carefully. But its creator, Azimuth, has agreed to provide regular reports to the committee regarding any significant modifications or applications. Not control, but transparency. Azimuth moved his platform forward again. I would also be willing to explain the Omnitrix's failsafe systems, the numerous protections built into the device to prevent misuse, even by its authorized wielder. The Senate chamber filled with discussion as representatives considered the proposal. Ben could sense the mood shifting, from suspicion and fear toward cautious openness. Not universal approval, but a willingness to consider a balanced approach. Chancellor Calix allowed the deliberation to continue for several minutes before raising her hands for attention. We have heard Master Tennyson's proposal, along with the evidence regarding Senator Driscoll's collusion with a known Sith Lord. I suggest we modify today's vote. Instead of deciding on Senator Driscoll's original motion for direct Senate control of Jedi artifacts, we should vote on Master Tennyson's proposal for a joint oversight committee. Driscoll rose to object, but found his support rapidly eroding as senators distanced themselves from his now tainted position. The evidence of his collaboration with Vilgax had undermined his credibility beyond repair. The Senate will now vote, Chancellor Calix announced, activating the voting system. Tension filled the chamber as senators registered their positions. Ben watched the tallying display, conscious that the Jedi Order's relationship with the Republic hung in the balance. After several minutes, the results appeared on the main display. The Senate approves the establishment of a joint oversight committee for force-sensitive artifacts and technologies, Chancellor Calix announced. Further, the Senate censures Senator Driscoll for undisclosed collaboration with hostile entities. A full investigation into Forever Knight's activities will commence immediately. Relief washed through Ben as he exchanged grateful glances with his companions. It wasn't a complete victory, the Jedi Order would need to adjust to greater transparency and collaboration, but it preserved their essential independence while addressing legitimate concerns. Driscoll, his political position crumbling around him, stormed from the chamber with his remaining supporters. Ben sensed this wasn't the last they'd see of the Forever Knights, but their immediate threat had been neutralized. As the Senate session concluded, Ben found himself surrounded by his team and fellow Jedi, receiving congratulations and expressions of relief. Well done, Grandmaster Max said, placing a hand on Ben's shoulder. You found a third path when most could only see two opposed options. I had some help, Ben replied, glancing at Kai, who smiled warmly in return. The Shifter's Communion, she said. It changed your perspective, didn't it? It showed me what was already there, Ben corrected. The balance between different approaches to power, different ways of understanding the universe. Something the Jedi have always sought, just from a particular angle. Azimuth, who had been quiet since the vote, finally spoke. Perhaps this is the Omnitrix's most important function, not the transformations themselves, but the perspective they provide. The ability to see beyond a single viewpoint. A most valuable insight, Rook observed. One that may serve us well in the challenges ahead. Speaking of which, Gwen interjected, Vilgax is still out there. And now he knows about the Shifter's Communion too. Let him come, Kevin said confidently. We stopped him this time, we'll stop him again. Ben nodded in agreement, though he suspected their next confrontation with Vilgax would be different in significant ways. The Sith Lord had glimpsed the potential of harmonizing technology with Force abilities, a dangerous knowledge in such ambitious hands. As they left the Senate chamber, walking through the grand corridors of the Republic's heart, Kai fell into step beside Ben. So, she said, what's next for the Omni Jedi? Back to temple raids and artifact recovery? Ben smiled at the nickname, which had begun as a media term but had gradually become accepted even within the Order. Eventually, he replied. But first, I think we've earned a moment to breathe. And I did promise you we'd explore the connection between the Omnitrix and those ancient Force techniques. A research expedition. Kai's eyes lit up with scholarly enthusiasm. To where? Wherever the trail leads us, Ben said. The shifter's work wasn't limited to the artifacts we've encountered so far. There could be others, or records of his techniques, scattered throughout the galaxy. Sounds like quite the adventure, she observed. One the Council might not entirely approve of, given their traditional caution about transformation studies. Then it's fortunate, Ben replied with a slight smile, that I've recently gained some political capital to spend. And that I know exactly the right archaeologist to partner with. Kai's response was interrupted by Rook calling them to the transport that would return them to the Jedi Temple. As they boarded, Ben gazed out at the Coruscant skyline, the endless city stretching to the horizon in all directions. The crisis had been resolved, at least for now. The Jedi Order would adapt to new oversight while maintaining its core independence. The Forge of Forms remained secure on Galvin Prime. Vilgax had been driven back, his alliance with the Forever Knights exposed and disrupted. Yet Ben sensed these events represented not an ending but a beginning. His brief experience of the Shifter's communion had opened his eyes to possibilities he had never fully considered, new ways of understanding the relationship between his Jedi training and the Omnitrix's capabilities. Balance. Harmony. Integration of seemingly opposed forces. These were the lessons that would guide him forward, both as a Jedi Master and as the wielder of the galaxy's most sophisticated transformation device. As the transport lifted off, carrying them back to the temple, Ben felt a sense of anticipation rather than conclusion. The next chapter of his journey was just beginning, and for the first time in years, he felt fully aligned with both aspects of his unique path. The Omni Jedi had found his balance. 3 days later, as the political situation stabilized and the newly formed Oversight Committee began its work, Ben stood on a landing platform at the Jedi Temple. The Rust Bucket 3 was being prepared for departure, supplies loaded for what might be an extended journey. Rook supervised the loading process with his usual attention to detail, while Kai conferred with several archaeological division droids regarding research data they were bringing aboard. The mission had been officially classified as artifact research in the Jedi records, though Ben suspected Grandmaster Max understood the deeper purpose. "You're really going through with this?" Gwen asked, approaching from the temple entrance. "Hunting down the Shifter's legacy?" "Someone should," Ben replied. "These techniques and artifacts have been forgotten or misunderstood for too long. Understanding them properly might prevent someone like Vilgax from weaponizing them in the future. And it has nothing to do with wanting to experience the Shifter's communion again," she asked with knowing skepticism. Ben smiled slightly. "I can't deny I'm curious. That moment of perfect harmony between the Omnitrix and my Force abilities, it felt right, Gwen. Like something I've been working toward without realizing it." "Just be careful," she advised. The ancient Jedi had reasons for abandoning transformation studies. The texts mention practitioners who lost themselves in the process, forgot who they were originally as they shifted between forms. "That's exactly why this research matters," Ben countered. "Finding the balance, understanding the proper approach rather than stumbling blindly like they did." Gwen nodded, conceding the point. "How long will you be gone?" "Hard to say. The trail starts on Ossus, where the first temple raid occurred. From there." He shrugged. "Wherever the evidence leads us." "Well, don't disappear completely," she instructed. "The new Oversight Committee will want regular reports, and Grandpa Max needs your political support while the dust settles with the Senate." "I'll check in regularly," Ben promised. "And if Vilgax resurfaces?" "We'll handle it," Kevin interrupted, joining them with several equipment cases. "The galaxy doesn't stop turning just because Ben Tennyson goes on a research trip." "Try not to sound so enthusiastic about my absence," Ben said dryly. Kevin grinned. "Someone's gotta keep the bad guys occupied while you're off finding yourself or whatever this is." Despite the teasing, Ben recognized the genuine support behind Kevin's words. Their team had been through too much together for any of them to doubt the other's commitment. "Master Tennyson," Rook called from the ship's ramp. "Final checks are complete. We are ready for departure when you are. Ben nodded acknowledgement, then turned back to Gwen and Kevin. Take care of each other, he said simply. Always do, Gwen replied, embracing her cousin briefly. Find what you're looking for, Ben. As final goodbyes were exchanged, Ben boarded the rust bucket with a sense of purpose that felt both familiar and new. Throughout his life, he had balanced dual identities, human and alien, Jedi and Omnitrix wielder, tradition and innovation. Now he was embarking on a journey to understand that duality more completely, to explore the ancient roots of the harmony he had briefly experienced during the Shifter's communion. He joined Kai and Rook in the cockpit as the ship's engines hummed to life. Through the viewport, he could see Gwen and Kevin standing on the platform, watching their departure. Course set for Ossus, Rook reported. Estimated travel time, 11 hours. Perfect, Ben replied, settling into the co-pilot's seat. Let's see what the Shifter left for us to find. As the rust bucket lifted off from the temple landing pad and accelerated toward the atmosphere, Ben felt the familiar excitement of beginning a new mission. But this one was different, not just about stopping a villain or preventing a crisis, but about understanding. Understanding the unique path he had walked for over 15 years, as both Jedi and wielder of the Omnitrix. Understanding the ancient practitioners who had explored similar ground thousands of years before. Understanding the perfect balance between seemingly opposed forces that, properly harmonized, created something greater than either alone. The stars stretched into hyperspace streaks around them, and Ben Tennyson, Jedi Master, Omnitrix wielder, the Omni-Jedi, smiled as they leapt toward the unknown. The journey continued. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.